Okay, welcome back to the Crucial Squared Circle from 104.9 The Edge. It is Mark Franchise here with Davison Sarai.
What up, Franchise?
Yo, what up? And our good buddy T joining us today.
Hello.
Not associated with tea and crumpets, but he's not ruling it out.
That's not true. I am ruling that out. I don't want it. I don't want it.
He does things really well. He does them to the T.
The crumpets, they fucking dry, man.
Yeah. Too many scrumpets will ruin your day.
That's true. Last I checked, they will.
All right. Much love. Anybody who listened and watched the first podcast of the Crucial Squared Circle, a extension of the most crucial podcast on 104.9 The Edge as well. Want to talk about some wrestling. There's a big wrestling fan base here in Kalamazoo and Battle Creek, and that's what we're going to cover. Lots of exciting interviews and really shows coming on the way as well. And we want to get into the first topic that we've dove into. The first episode, we kind of want to introduce ourselves and just get our viewpoints in terms of how we feel the wrestling world is going right now, how it used to be, and where we see it going in the future. This is probably, I'd say, the most exciting time in wrestling since the buyout in 2002.
I got to agree. I've been having the time of my life for the last couple of weeks. As disappointed as I've been in Vincent Kennedy McMahon and his family's swill for the last couple of years, this has been a real breath of fresh air for me.
And the interesting thing is, like, well, obviously now people are talking about it again. Now it seems like lately it's just been really hot topic, especially with All Elite showing back up, and just some things that were said. A couple of days ago, Seth Rollins made a comment about AEW and Kenny Omega, about AEW basically being minor leagues to the WWE. And, when you've got a brand like WWE, it's like, we get it. You guys, I mean, the company's been around for years and years. But I kind of agree with what Jim Ross was saying. He during his podcast, he kind of said, man, in this industry, there is no minor leagues. There's, everybody, it's similar to any kind of job in the entertainment industry where, whether you're with somebody or you're against somebody, at the end of the day, you're all in the same industry together. And I'm a very firm believer in, if one falls, in a sense, the rest is going to fall. And honestly, that's kind of what I dealt with when WCW was bought out by WWF. When that happened, I literally remember going, wow, guess that's the end of WWF for me. Because at that point, I was like, they're not going to have to try anymore,
Well, I remember we talked about that last week. And, I was trying to find a little bit of light at the end of that tunnel. There were some points to focus on. But, Cena came up and we talked about it turning into a cartoon for the most part. Mm-hmm. But in the last week since doing it and talking to some friends and people who, reached out having listened to the podcast or parts of it, it seems like a lot of people were catching up and getting into the independent wrestling scene and getting more into the Japanese stuff.
Yeah.
Way back then even, Japan was really starting to blow up.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some really good wrestling out there that has never been discovered before. And, I think that's the big problem, especially with what Rollins said. It's just like, dude, at the end of the day, Kenny Omega is one of the most over guys in the world right now and has been. So for Rollins to say something like that, and, Jim Ross kind of gave him a low blow and said, maybe one day he'll be as over as his girlfriend. Oops. And, kind of cooked his ass on the spot, But it's very true, though. Look how Becky Lynch blew up and absolutely absorbed what the fans were telling her. I don't think she asked any questions. I think she heard the audience and said, I'm capturing this. This is mine. They're giving this to me. And therefore, this is who I am.
You know what happened, though, too? They've already tried to kind of spike the ball on her a couple of times, I think.
Oh, yeah.
There's no question she was the hottest thing going in their company for a while.
Yep.
And it seems like another one of those things where Vince and Creative sat back and went, now this is happening organically, and we're selling a lot of shirts, and people are stoked and excited. But we have this Ronda thing we really want to be focusing on. Yeah. And maybe in the future we want to bring in a Tyson Fury or somebody nobody's ever heard of. So, she was blown up organically. Here's the thing I've been thinking about this Rollins deal. This isn't the first time he stuck his foot up his own ass. Just a couple months ago,
yeah,
he said something about, I'm the best wrestler on the planet, prove me wrong. And one Mr. Will Ospreay
yes.
from across the planet reached out and said, yo, bro, I'm alive. And Seth proceeded to just make a fool of himself all over social media for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and then Jim Ross was on his ass around then too, saying the same kind of thing as watching Will Ospreay taking care of business and doing his thing for the last little while. Will Ospreay is a trained, well-established individual, just like I would say out there Juice Robinson, but that's a whole different animal that I would enjoy having a conversation with, because they both have a very interesting knack for mixing in between what they do and then challenging Seth Rollins to say, come on, man, step to the plate, do something, become more, become better.
Yeah.
But no, kept putting his mouth out there, his bullshit out there, and wasn't...
Well, and he kept falling back into, when he didn't have anything left to say,
my money.
let's talk about my money. Let's
Right.
talk about my bank account.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like, well, Hulk Hogan had a huge bank account and broke it and wrestled himself out of a wet paper bag, but...
It's like, do you really want to have the hip-hop conversation right now?
I mean,
It was the same thing. It was at Future or somebody from Migos said something to like Busy Bone or something over Instagram. He's like, let's compare bank accounts. And he's like, no, man, let's have a bars challenge. Bring it. You're about to get dumped. So it's the same kind of concept where it's like, okay, like you said, at the end of the day, people are, oh, look at my bank account. It's like, I don't give a trash,
Look what I can do in this ring.
And it was something that you brought up, Davison, last week when we were talking about a couple of things. And, I joined a page on Facebook for wrestling fans, and it's just like the most annoyed human beings on the planet. They have found everything to complain about. And one of the major things that kind of makes me laugh, too, is how they talk about Jim Ross's time in the industry is over. And can you please just remind everybody who he's responsible for bringing up?
Oh, so yeah, if you didn't hear it, we were talking about the fact that, Jim's been around for ages. I don't know, 40 years or so, I'd say, in the business.
Easily.
And so, first and foremost, most fans are going to think of him as the voice of the WWE for a very, very long time. Prior to that, he was unquestionably the voice of WCW.
Yep.
But then when he came over to WWE, not only was he on the air, but he was behind the scenes recruiting, and he was the head of talent relations. So during a particular window of time, he was responsible for bringing in, and this is a shoot, brother, The Rock. This moonshine, dude.
Let her tell you something, man.
It was The Rock. It was Cena, the prototype. It was Shelton Benjamin. It was, let me think, Lesnar. It was Randy Orton. It was Batista. It was Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, Perry Saturn, and he who shall not be named, Mr. Christopher Benoit.
That's just a stellar list.
I mean, that's a who's who of who's doing what.
And now you have that guy basically, sitting in the driver's seat in terms of All Elite. They're going to go to him for any kind of guidance that they're going to need, because he's probably back of the house, one of the most experienced guys on the staff. And you look at the staff and who they have over there, I mean, it's ridiculous. And again, it's just funny because, I saw some of the people on the Facebook page, they're like, they're making memes and stuff like WWE uses too many legends. Oh, did you see DDP on All Elite? How sweet. And I'm like, yeah, but they weren't booking DDP for weeks in advance so that people would watch their product.
Well, I mean, let's be fair. Would that happen?
No. I mean, I didn't even make it. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't even make it. I knew The Rock was going to be there. And I still didn't watch it because I was like, I know exactly what he's going to do. He's going to show up. The crowd's going to go insane. He's probably going to get in the ring with one of the biggest heels at the moment. Oh, gee, Baron Corbin. Absolutely dump the guy and then give him rock bottom in people's elbow. And it's like, I've heard this song before. I've seen this. And I love The Rock. I think he's one of the most inspirational human beings alive. And as a kid, I looked up to him so much and still do. He's amazing. He's an amazing human being. And he's kind-hearted and he's generous and he's humble, even though he's a multi-millionaire. But I just don't have any more excitement for seeing him come back and do them a solid.
Well, I don't know if anybody else does, but I pay attention to the ratings. I find that stuff fascinating.
I am very interested about that for tonight.
Yeah. I watch how the show goes. I watch the next day how the ratings went, and then I watch the next show.
Right.
To see how things might have been influenced.
Yeah.
That broadcast, it was their debut on Fox, and I think they hit close to 4 million viewers, like
Yeah.
3 point something high. And by the second week, when they didn't have The Rock and they didn't have Stone Cold, they dropped over 1 million viewers.
And that's
Wait, pause. Stone Cold was there?
Was he not in the first one?
I don't
was
think
adver-
so.
He was advertised to be there, but he did the opening intro where he was like, "Welcome to SmackDown," and he wasn't even on set from what I saw.
that's
It
a
was
whole
just
other
a
episode,
pre-recorded.
isn't
They showed at this time, and same thing with Undertaker.
Oh,
Supposedly was supposed to be there.
Yeah.
But again,
Well, so there you go. So false advertising, pull the rug out. They got their quick pop,
got there quick.
and
Right.
they lost like 30% of their audience in 1 week. And I hate to say I told you so, but I was saying just last week that showing up on a big network is no guarantee. You have to have a quality product to sell.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not getting what they think they need out of them, they're going to make changes. And, like I said, I would never hope for anybody or any business to not succeed. But you got to set yourself up for success. You got to, I don't know, you have to have some guidance there. And the guidance as of late has been pretty crazy. And this whole week was actually, and that's the thing. I don't think people are giving AEW room to breathe, especially these fans. I just, this is what, their 4th week of Dynamite, and people are just, they're tearing them apart. And
What are the complaints? I'm not
just that
Yeah.
there's, they see that Jim Ross says that there's too many flips, and then they take that and they're like, oh my God, it's all flips, and it's all acrobats, and it's like Cirque du Soleil and all this stuff. And it's like,
I mean, I
what do you
listened to
want?
that. I listened to that interview though with Ross.
Right.
He didn't say I hate all these flips. He said, he has some concern for the longevity of people's careers.
Yeah.
He said it's wickedly different than what he was accustomed to. He didn't make any kind of notion that you can't have ring psychology and flips. Like, these are not mutually exclusive things.
And we were talking about it before. One of the biggest, and in my opinion, I just think it's one of the best articulated matches ever, is Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio Jr. at Halloween Havoc 98. And they both even agree, like,
Yeah.
they would not change a single thing about that match. That's very similar to the style of Lucha Bros and Young Bucks and
Thank you.
all these guys that are drawing inspiration from matches like that. Back then, when there were real fans who had, some freaking guts to them, they saw it for what it was. They appreciated that these guys were doing these things. Now it's like people don't want to see that, and it's like, well, then what do you want to see? And it's getting to the point where I really feel like people are just complaining for the sake of complaining.
Yeah.
Like they're just cynical. They're just cynical beings.
I unplugged from the IWC a long time ago. I even stopped looking into like podcasts and things. I just wanted to see SmackDown on TV in a vacuum. I didn't want to have expectations. I didn't want other people's opinions. I was like, okay, I'm just going to enjoy this for what it is.
Yeah.
And that lasted about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I did that for a bit as well. I was about, when I came into wrestling, I mean, I jumped into it as of late with only WWE as sterile product coming in and not watching and having Raw or SmackDown available. I would only watch the pay-per-views. And then after a while, I was like, okay, now what's happening between these pay-per-views? Then I started watching it and was like, I don't care. None of this builds up. None of this makes sense. None of this is adding to anything for me. And so then I jumped into New Japan, and that actually re-sparked my interest. But jumping back for a moment, those ratings that you were talking about. So y'all know that AEW is going against SmackDown tonight, right?
Because they had to.
So
No.
yes, so AEW is replaying their Wednesday Night Dynamite from this last week tonight with unaired footage on TNT against
Right.
SmackDown, and SmackDown is going to be moved to FS1 because of the World Series.
Is this some of their own counter programming?
No, this is I'm
It
not
just
sure.
work out that way.
I think that they had heard through the grapevine, which Renee Young had posted something on Instagram or something along those lines yesterday.
Yeah.
In reference to them moving her show to FS1 to be immediately after the fact.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, which got me thinking, how soon did she find out that was happening? And then a whole domino effect of questions and wondering as, they probably talk. They probably have to talk. They live with each other. They love each other. They do talk. They have to.
Are you referring to
so-
she and Mr. John Moxley by any chance?
Yes.
Okay. Just making
So,
sure
yeah.
people.
He's on their health
Status.
insurance plan.
I love that he is on her. Oh God, bless America. The whole situation with that is just wonderful in so many different interesting facets. But very specifically, I think that it's wonderful that they're throwing it out there. I am interested in those ratings that they end up pulling.
Yeah.
Because even if it's just 500,000 people, that's interesting as all hell. Because what's SmackDown going to do on FS1?
Right.
I mean, I'm pretty spiteful in the fact that WWE was intentionally trying to screw with Dynamite by moving NXT up as fast as they did.
Yeah.
Like, okay, go ahead and
Oh,
counter
yeah.
program. Let's see what happens.
Yep. So we're going to get into it today. We're going to talk about who we feel Wrestler of the Week is. We're even going to get in the Match of the Week. But the main topic tonight, we want to get into our top 10 tag teams of all times. Now, that could be because of pure talent. That could be because they were fan favorites, because they were favorites of ours. We're going to give some insight and reason as to some justification to the people that we pick, some honorary mentions as well, but we're really going to focus on the top three that we all kind of feel like. And I think out of all the action that I've seen, I missed out on a lot of it. I think if I was going to have to pick Wrestler of the Week, just for taking a chance and because I'm excited to see where it goes, I got to go with Finn Balor with the fact that he turned heel. I think that's huge. I thought the surprise kick was pulled off rather nicely.
That was really nice.
I'm really interested to see where he takes it. Actually, TMZ caught up with him, and they asked him what he thinks about being moved down to what his hopes are to going back to the main roster, and he straight up just told them like, wherever I'm at is the main roster.
Yep.
So I love
Well
the fact
said.
that dude's got an attitude. I think he's going to be a good heel because he's naturally one of the more gifted wrestlers in NXT/WWE. He's one of my favorites to watch. I've always been a fan of him. So if I was going to give a Wrestler of the Week, I'd have to give shots to him for making that heel turn and for having the crowd support behind him too.
T, how long ago were you watching New Japan? Were you watching when Balor was over there?
No, I did rewatch some of his matches for a little bit there, but no, what jumped me in was Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega and Okada. I saw the second match out there, and not there, but I saw the second match and was like, what is happening to wrestling over there? And then started digging a hole and found myself with Wild Pegasus and Lionheart, and there's all sorts of just different. But anyway,
Yeah.
you asked a question, I told you how to build a clock, so.
Basically, just he already had a full career as like a main event heel in Japan from a
Yeah.
handful of years ago, Prince
Devitt.
Devitt.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are very excited for this next chapter. Like I heard somebody say, what did they say? If you ever wondered if Balor had any charisma, he's got it in droves. It's going to come out now.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And like I said, it's the most exciting time for wrestling because I don't know, man. I'm a firm believer that if you have major competition coming up, and I thought they would have learned this lesson before, but I don't know why WWE guys are taking shots at WCW. Very similar, if you guys will remember, when WCW started having real competition with WWE. WWE ran these vignettes with these two guys dressed as super old Macho
yeah.
Man
Yes.
and
The Nacho Man.
the Nacho Man and Hulk Hogan as super old guys, and and a lot of people were saying like, why would you even draw attention to that if you don't even consider it, that obviously showed that they were threatened by them, and
flip back through my dissertation of the psychology of Vincent K. McMahon.
and
He runs his life by whatever he thinks he has the smallest dick in the world. Let's just get it out there. And maybe it's because he insists on having a 50-inch neck. I don't know. But this man has been sprinting away from his childhood his entire career. He makes these dumbass decisions.
And the first thing out of my mouth, realistically, logically, when AEW launches is whatever they do, let them talk about us. Let's not talk about them. Let's focus on our product. But they're not. They're scared, and they should be, because they can have all these fans twirled around their finger like they have been, and I don't even bother getting into it with them, because these are people who, through the worst times, have stuck by WWE and have been entranced by it and how amazing it still is. And I just be honest with you, I've watched a lot of pay-per-views the last few years, more pay-per-views than I've watched from WWE in decades. And it's just, a lot of it is not that impressive. Some of it I try to emotionally get into because there's some really good talent all across the board. But a lot of it is very uninspiring. I just remember being a kid and being on the edge of my seat and marking the hell out over matches. Yeah. And it just doesn't happen anymore. Now it's just something where you just kind of hit back and you just watch it and it comes at you and oh shit. And you have some fun with, I think AEW is really what's bringing the excitement back in wrestling for me because they're doing something different. Like I said, they can go after WWE all they want. And a lot of, fans on Facebook are like, oh, so AEW can do it, but WWE can't. It's like, no, it's not a matter of who should and who shouldn't. It's a business move. AEW is hungry. They're hungry for viewers, and they're hungry to change viewers' minds and to open their eyes up to wrestling the way it should be. Add some excitement back into it. Would not be smart for WWE wrestlers or the company to take shots and draw attention to another brand like they have before.
Now, when they have a pretty objectively better product. So, and I'm going to say AEW, and of course that's a subjective statement.
Right.
So you pick Finn from NXT. I'm going to go ahead and pick my person for the week, who is an AEW performer. Mm-hmm. And as we were speaking before the show came on the air, I've been a fan of this young man for a very long time. Built himself quite the reputation on the indies, and specifically in a lot of those kind of savage hardcore matches. He's kind of notorious for what's considered the biggest bump in wrestling history. Talking about one Joey Janela. Now, I'm always going to pull for an underdog. I've always been this way in wrestling. You're also going to learn that I absolutely despise Jim Cornette.
Oh, yeah.
I can't stand this man.
So you haven't been watching the new NWA Power?
I have, and I like that show.
it.
And I really wish he wasn't on there. I mean, between his transphobic and homophobic commentary lately, I mean, he's just plugged up his own ass from 40 years ago.
Right.
But so he's been talking a mess about Joey Janela, calling him, Jelly Roll Janela or some nonsense. He's still into body shaming. Cool, Jim. But so he made fun of the fact that Janela, it's kind of on the short side, not very athletic, lacks skill. I think he was calling him like a mud outlaw guy. But all of a sudden, we've got Janela wrestling Kenny Omega twice in 2 weeks and having stellar matches. And then this week, he who did he fight? Did he fight Omega again this week?
Yeah.
He did.
On Dynamite.
Yeah, he was in Dark last week, and he was on the regular show this week. I was talking to my friend, and to me, Janela had like the sell of the week. Did you all see the match against Omega?
Missed it.
So Joey's laying against the ropes. Here comes Omega with one of his V triggers, which look absolutely lethal anyway.
Yeah.
He caught Janela so that he fell between the top and second rope, and he just kind of pendulumed on the second rope for a full 10 seconds. Like he was dead.
Yeah, right.
And they just gave him time to swing there, like sell it. Omega brought him in, hit him with the one-wing angel. But everything from him expanding his moveset to working on his health, I guess Cornette making fun of him has gotten him into the gym. You can see improvements. I just see him going straight up. I think he sells great. I think he wrestles great. He's got a good character.
It's exciting. Like I said, the only issue with AEW that I can point out right now, and I wouldn't really say it's an issue, but obviously something they're focused on too, is the size of their roster. This is something new. They're still building this up. They're literally, I can't remember another time where, WCW was around for a while. And then they brought in Monday Nitro, which was like, oh, no, okay, now we got competition on the television. But this is a brand new company. And not only is it a brand new company, but now they have their own show right off the bat. So you got to give these wrestlers and these storylines some time to build up and just enjoy it. Instead of sitting there and just analyzing every little thing, just sit back and enjoy it, because you've had years and years and years of WWE. You know what it is. If you followed it, you know everything like the back of your hand, and nothing surprises you anymore, but everything is amazing at the same time, because you know it all, apparently, if you're a WWE fan.
Well, they're trying to sell as much product as possible. They're the Nickelback of professional wrestling. Yeah, I said it. And I fucking mean it.
Ow.
Yeah. Ow.
Yeah. Fight me.
No other words needed. You know?
Case closed. Talk to you next week, everybody.
Yeah, we out. No. Oh, man. Yeah,
So- Were we talking also about match of the week?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I was a little behind this week. I just had so much going on personally that I didn't get to catch a lot of it. The clips that I did see, though, I got to say, that Lucha Bros tag match.
The clips I saw on that.
Yep, that was my match with Private Party.
Private, yeah.
The groom's
Dude's finisher is one of the nastiest and most creative finishers I've seen before.
Talking about Penta?
Yeah.
Of course.
I was like, as soon as
I mean,
he...
who
As
else
soon
would
as
we-
he lifted him up, I was like, what's he doing? And then he dropped him, and I was like, oh, over.
The assisted package pile driver.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Filthy.
Just see him hit that on Christopher Daniels the week before on the fucking ramp.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, he's dead now.
Yeah. He gone.
Yeah. No,
He's joined the wacky inflatable arm flailing tube, mads.
That match was nuts. And I mean, for the fact that, Lucha Bros have been all over the planet for the last couple of years. We talked about it last week.
Yeah.
Private Party, this is their first big gig.
Right,
They're just
exactly.
hitting TV.
Yeah.
And they looked every part of that group. They belonged in that ring with those guys.
Again, you know, a lot of people will say, oh, they're just spot monkeys and the whole thing is just a word. And I'm just like, it's easy for you to sit there with Cheeto stains around your face on a keyboard talking about guys who literally live this sport every single day and then go out on a national television show and put on a performance of a lifetime for free. And it's not good enough for you. It's like a circus act to you. And it's like, how long have you been watching wrestling? How long has lucha wrestling been around for? Like, this is no different than anything that you've seen before, except it's completely different. These are new teams. They're coming up with new ways to entertain. And again, it's like I said, you can't please everybody. What do you want?
And I was thinking about that too. So it is interesting because it is a brand new company, which is a true statement.
Yeah.
But the core fan base of AEW are primarily people who have been watching the independents for a long time anyway.
Right, exactly.
And most of the acts in AEW are the cream of the crop of the global international, independent wrestling scene.
Yeah.
So it's a new show, but then people come in, I think, with a lot of preconceived notions of what's going to happen because they
Right.
are established stars. So it's like they get a little bit of like leeway for being new, and at the same time, I do think there are a lot of heavy expectations.
Yeah, and
this
everybody
performance.
just has that Seth Rollins mentality where it's like, oh, look who's making the more money, and they that's really the only excuse they have. So they'll do anything they have to do to justify their anger that there's another product out there that's offering something different. And like you said, it's mainly people who have been watching the independent circuit. People who don't know who Kenny Omega is, that's your fault for being uneducated and not doing
God.
your research and not making the attempt to find good wrestling and rather just sit there and being fed everything that WWE feeds you.
And then being mad about it.
And being mad about it. Yeah, exactly.
I
It's
don't
just,
like this.
yeah.
T, you said that Omega really drew you back into wrestling.
Yes, he did. Yes. So I don't know what ended up sparking my interest in Kenny Omega in the first place, aside from the fact that I was sitting with Jake, a good friend of ours, and he had said, hey, you got to check this match. So ended up, him and I stood up one night and just watched the whole thing from beginning to end, him and Okada. So I take back my last statement. I know exactly what drew me in. It was watching it with him.
Yeah.
So going through that match and watching that, and then that night leaving his place, Jake's place, and then watching every single match outside of that of his, and then going, whoa, what is this? And then hearing through the ether that he's from Winnipeg, and I'm like, oh my God, you stupid idiot. I'm all about that life.
Yeah.
So Jericho started ringing like, it would be great. Jericho, Kenny Omega. Oh my God. And then it started
I
happening.
think he had Omega on his podcast once. Maybe.
At one
Is
point in
that what it
time,
was?
yeah, he was like, "Oh yeah, you say you're from Winnipeg, huh? You know, there's another wrestler who's great about that, and the greatest in the world, GOAT." But yeah, Jericho is another love of mine. He's another man.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people are angry at him too.
Really?
Oh come on!
For what?
Oh,
Okay.
Like I said, it's just that negative mentality. Oh, they got a 50-year-old heavyweight champion, and I'm like, bro, look at some of the storylines that are going on in WWE right now, and you're going to complain that their champion is a guy who constantly reinvents himself and can still entertain in the ring.
That's the thing. Are you not entertained? That's the thing that I keep hearing yelling into my head.
Right.
Like, watch the screen. Have you taken your eyes off of it? No, you haven't. Why? Because it's entertaining. You're seeing it. You're enjoying it. You're at the edge of your seat. You're engaged.
You're talking about it now.
You're talking about it.
Now you're going on the internet and typing about
You're
it.
angry.
It sparked an emotional feeling within you.
Guess
I
what?
think it's presented differently though too than people are accustomed to. So like in WWE, they will throw a 60-year-old man in the ring and think that you're just going to forget that he's 60. So he's going to hang with a 20-year-old in a normal way, and you're
Right.
supposed
Rest
to ignore
holds?
that. Right. With Jericho, they're forever acknowledging his age.
Yes.
Like, you're damn right, I'm old. Look at this gut. Like, I do not look like an athlete
Right.
anymore.
But I
But
can
guess what I
take you.
will do? I will talk shit for 10 minutes, and I'll do a twisting back elbow to your face.
Right.
Which looks like ass, and I'll still beat you with it.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I got to take a break. I got to open up for Iron Maiden. Okay, I'll be back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
no
mean,
big deal.
I just feel like as long as you're acknowledging the reality of it. So like on NWA Power, what's that guy's name? Storm.
Oh.
Not James Storm, but the other guy.
Yeah, he got my attention. I can't remember his name.
He
but yeah.
headlined on the first show against their world champion. And he's been like a mainstay in the NWA territories for 20-some years. And they made a whole storyline around him being a late 50s guy, trying to keep up with Magnus or whatever his new name is. But at least they acknowledged it and worked it into a storyline. And I feel like they kind of do the same thing with Jericho. It's WWE that always wants to pretend that these old guys are still cartoon superheroes. Like, well,
It is the way they are, and that's why I've never, basically the reason I've been watching WWE the last few years is for social reasons, because I've made new friends who are also into wrestling, and I go, hey, sweet, that's something we got in common. And but watching AEW is completely different, because it's the first time in a long time I've really been sucked into the wrestling. And it's something that's happening right now that's drawing a lot of criticism. People are freaking out about it, and they, like I said, they just need to chill. They need to hone in on the fact that this is not only a new product, it's 4 weeks old. You don't go to a baby that's 4 weeks old. Come on,
Walk.
talk. Come on, you're killing me over here.
killing me.
Oh,
Where's
you
your
just threw up again? Are you
Good
kidding me? What is that smell?
but to some of us, they're already running. They're not even
Right.
crawling. So it's subjective, right? Everything's
Right.
subjective. But
Again, these are people who don't like going out of their way. They don't like going out of their way to find things that are good in life.
I will say that I hope that that's not the focal point of what you're drawing on when you find yourself in the internets and in the world, because I will say that there is a lot of positivity.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
No, not on the internet, but I'm talking more so in the sense of with AEW.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because there's not a lot of positivity on the internet. But with AEW, yeah, there's a lot of positivity in that. And I mean, like you said earlier, when it comes down to AEW, WWE, there's two sides that you had commented on when we were talking on the side a while back.
Yeah.
WWE has been, and as we've seen, making them people turn their shirts inside out or take their AEW shirts off or whatever it may mean, and kicking people out if they have signs.
Yeah.
In some way, shape, or form. AEW is different. They've been going about it in a different way, in which if there's WWE signage that is bad, they will ask them to take it off or not wear it, not show it, because they don't want to be a negative, but they'll still let them in the show. They'll still let them be a part of the experience.
Yeah.
Why? Because they bought a damn ticket.
Right.
So they're still investing into those folks. So I would like to say that also in that same vein, I think that there's a lot more positivity in the line of AEW because of the newness of it. I would lean also in the idea of that you were saying that you feel as though that they're running in some way, shape, or form. It might be. I think that it may be a bit of the headstrong mentality with, like, if you get a child who starts to walk already.
Yeah.
Like, they may not have the balance yet, but they are leaning forward, and now they're running, and so they're waiting for their legs to catch up with them. And and I think that is surely going to happen without hesitation, and it has to because you have to build those strong legs.
Yeah.
And I think that they have a good crux of folks. So jumping also back to the idea with Private Party and with
Lucha Brothers.
Yes, the Lucha Brothers. Now, that was a fun match for me because when I watched it, I watched a certain level of education in the ring. And I liked watching education in the ring at not at the expense of the wrestler, but at a means of grooming them so that they are like, hey, we're on TV, we're on pushing this.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So in the sense of like Lucha Brothers were teaching Private Party, and it wasn't a hard knock lesson or anything of that nature where everybody was getting receipts left and right because there was botches, but more so in the sense of like, hey, guess what? You're going to be pushed to your limit, and we are going to. You made it to semifinals. That matters, and you're pushing yourself. So I very, very, very much enjoy what they were doing with that tag team, because that whole aspect with Jim Ross and the conversations of doing transitions and recruiting and all these other folks, same thing. You've got a veteran. You've got folks who've been doing these flips and trips and tricks and all these things, and you're getting them into alignment with folks who are brand new and learning that whole craft in the sense of hard camera angles and movement and watching for TV time or even commercial breaks or breathers in between. All of that has been just small stuff that I've been nitpicking and watching, but at the same time, I'm like, last week they had a bad camera angle. This week I didn't see that bad camera angle because Kevin Dunn's not involved, and also because they're doing more of micromanagement and growth.
And I saw, like you said, the kind of in-ring grooming or training happening during a match. I caught another tiny little subtle example of that. Do you remember when Cody came to the ring to do his promo, and they showed the inner circle, which is Jericho and his goon squad? They were like up in their little mezzanine area, and they had the air horns. And so when Cody would try to speak, they'd blow the air horns off, right? At one point, they took a quick camera cut up there, and it was mainly Jericho in the middle, and then who's the guy with the headband from LAX? The shorter guy.
Can't remember his name.
Can't remember. Ortiz, maybe? Well, he had one of the air horns, and he went to do it while Cody was talking. And I saw Jericho knock his hand just for a hot second. They cut back to Cody talking, and then you heard an air horn like 2 seconds later.
Right.
And I watched it back, and I was like, you know what? That was him telling him, like, not yet. Wait till he talks to this point, and then do it.
Right.
And then from then on, you could kind of catch up on that timing.
Yeah.
It's subtle, but they're definitely doing some of that stuff.
And and it doesn't help that you have these. You've got a lot of opinions from WWE legends. Bully Ray coming out and saying his piece on Twitter, and then you had Kevin Nash yelling, "Get off my lawn." On Twitter. Kevin Nash was like, it's the little things, guys. The fact that Jericho was up there with an AEW mic made it very clear that it was a work. It's just the little details you got to pay attention to. And I'm like, okay, so you guys didn't use WCW mics when you were taking over as the NWO?
How many times has Bro talked about being in the NWO outside of kayfabe? How do they keep popping in and out? Like, how is it okay to be talking about it from the outside, but still insisting that you do it on the inside as if there's no outside?
He's an outsider.
It's
Don't
insane.
forget about that.
Oh, God.
Hey, yo.
Hey, yo.
But exactly, that was my point. I was like, okay, are you serious? Like, are you seriously doing that? Like, again, it's just everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's got something to say. And it's like, would you just let this damn brand grow for a minute?
Part of them is because they ain't got no jobs. I'm not trying to sound funny, but I mean, them WCW checks stopped fucking coming.
Ain't no winter wrestling cons.
Nash is getting those Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle checks, though.
Hey, all right. Speaking of the ooze.
Just super shredded him.
Royalties.
Okay, so be it.
Oh,
anyway.
He was Waldo. He was Waldo in Punisher.
Oh.
Yeah, he was. That's right.
Yeah, oh, sorry, he was a Russian hitman.
Everybody knows that.
Yeah, sorry. Common fucking knowledge.
Derp. One of his biggest roles ever. Okay, so let's get into the tag teams. And we were going to discuss our top 10 favorite tag teams of all time. We figured it would probably be easier if we just loosely discover the top 7 of our list. And then we're really going to focus on the top 3 tag teams of all time. And I guess let's just open it up with just a general feeling. I started my list off with a team who, when it comes to devastating tag team finishers, I've always thought it was really cool, the creative ways tag teams came up with finishers. One of the most devastating tag team finishers, in my opinion, from what I've seen through the years, was performed by Cronus and Saturn as the Eliminators. It's called Total Elimination, where it's a combo sweep kick to the back of the legs and a spinning heel kick to the face at the same time. Yep. If you watch the initial ECW invasion of Monday Night Raw when they teamed together, that's who jumps in the ring.
Oh, God.
Cronus and Saturn get in the ring and just destroy this guy, and the crowd just goes nuts because they're like, what the hell was that? They're not.
It was called real violence.
Right. It was the first time a
kicked that
violent
man in the
tag team move was performed on Raw, and people were like, what is going on? And I that's why they're on. And again, too, huge fan favorites. ECW fans had a big respect for Cronus and Saturn. Again, two guys who, on a solo level, Perry Saturn reached some kind of success. He came out with Marlena at one time, wore big pink fuzzy hats, and
When WCW, he won I think he was television and probably
Yeah.
U.S. champion at some point.
yeah,
He did all right.
And he's a solid wrestler, solo wrestler. I think the tag team division, he probably had a pretty good chance of taking it far. In my opinion, I felt that the Eliminators were a really strong ECW tag team, and probably one of the most devastating tag teams in the ECW brand. I think as they were booked, they were one of the hardest tag teams to defeat. Multiple time ECW tag team champions. Yep. But again, it was that finisher. I remember the first time I saw that finisher, I was like, what the hell is that? Yep. And that takes a lot of talent to be able to choreograph something like that to where you're both striking at the same time to get the maximum damage to your opponent.
And as a point of reference, a variation of that move is the current finisher for Red Dragon in NXT,
Right.
or for the Undisputed Era.
Right.
But it would be really interesting to look up two of those clips and watch them back to back. There is zero comparison to be made.
Right, exactly. They just, again, and
Same
all those,
move, but wow.
Yeah, ECW, I mean, those guys were innovative. I mean, they were the innovators of violence, but they were also extremely innovative with what they were doing in the ring, just because of what Paul E. would allow people to do. He would allow them to express themselves. Mm-hmm. Guys who were like, I know I'm good enough for professionals. Watch me go and prove it.
Yep.
And he would be like, go for it. That's why he got picked dry for years and years until he had nothing left.
Well, that actually opens the door really nicely for my first choice. Also from ECW. I chose this team primarily, I wasn't a huge fan of both guys, but one really stood out for me. I've been a long-term fan of a young man named New Jack.
Oh, yeah.
Who came out of ECW back in the day. He's got some legends hanging off of his back pocket that I want to talk about at some point.
Yeah,
Horrifying
no doubt.
human being. So those of you who know I'm talking about, you already know he was in a team called the Gangstas with a man named Mustafa back in the day. Now, how does one describe a Gangstas match? Well, let me try. It's almost like you have no idea what's happening.
Yeah.
Some loud hip-hop music starts playing. It doesn't stop playing until you find yourself unconscious in the ring with a shopping cart wrapped around your head. They would come down with, pillage and plunder, and they would just beat the living hell out of people for, 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. They'd win or they wouldn't. The music would keep right on playing. They'd walk back. The music would keep right on playing.
There might be a winner.
Amazing.
But the whole point was we're going to come out there and just destroy you. And I think he said it best in the Beyond the Mat interview. He holds his hands up to the mic. He says, "You see my knuckles? You don't, 'cause they ain't none." That's from hitting a bitch in the eye.
Yeah. New Jack was a legit bounty hunter, and he's said he's got something like 5 justified homicides on him.
Yeah, 5 justified. He was like, it was, he even said, he's like, I'm not proud of it. It was either me or them, and I'm still here.
Now, strangely, he is proud to talk about
kid.
the mass transit issue that took place.
Oh, yeah.
When he scalped that young man at the ECW arena.
Yeah.
So he's got his moments where he's pretty proud of his track record, and others where he's, what. But
Yeah. Still, though, that's real fear. Like,
he's horrifying.
who are we wrestling tonight?
No, thank you. No, thank you.
And a team that we've spoken about a lot that's on my list too. It's hard. I'm just trying to compile. What I did was try to compile hopefuls and people who have made a name for themselves, and Lucha Bros, straight up. I mean, what tag team title haven't they held other than WWE Tag Team Championships? I mean, they've been moving across the world, and these guys they've got charisma, they've got humor, and they've got some serious freaking talent. I mean, like I said, the
chemistry too.
They understand each other's movesets so well. Their finishers are creative, and they're also giving guys an opportunity to prove themselves in their matches. Like I said, the match that they recently had on Dynamite this week, and then when they faced, the Dinosaur Brothers, the Jurassic
The
Twins,
Jurassic
The
Express.
Lucha Bros.
the Jurassic Express.
Yeah, the Jurassic Express. Yeah.
The last week, just, they could have gone out there and squashed him in 2 minutes, but
Yep.
they had a 15-minute match with him because again, that means a lot when you're clearly the best at what you do, and then you've got a couple of guys who are not as talented, not as big, but you go out there and you have fun and you let them rip and show the world what they can do. I mean, that's a classy move right there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they've already made my list, is because they're putting on these insane matches, and yet they've got the respect for the business and people coming up and the company itself that they're already willing to put guys over, even if you still take the W. The fact that they're allowing guys to show the world what they've got, that's a pro move right there. And it was an easy pick to put those guys in the top 10 already of all time, because their career is just beginning, and they've been around for a bit here, and they're about to really take off. I'm excited to see what they're going to put together soon.
Well, I'm actually going to one-up you because we didn't compare notes ahead of time. I put the Luchas in my top 3
Word.
already. I just discovered them in the last 2 years, and they hit every one of my check boxes.
Wow.
From the agility to, their tandem work, to the speed, to the agility, to how amazing even just their aesthetic is.
Wow.
Is there a cooler looking professional wrestler on the planet than Pentagon right now?
Those guys are sick.
He looks like Skeletor climbed up Silver King's ass and just started dropping Hurricane Ranas on people.
But his beautiful blue eyes, they
pop.
They show up.
They pop through a horror show of a face. So, yeah, I mean, I've known of him just about as long as you, and already I'm such a huge fan. So Pentagon, one of his big moves, too, is he likes to put a man on his face, rest his knee on the other man's arm, take the up arm, threaten the crowd, I'm going to break this motherfucker off. And then he breaks that motherfucker off.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really pretty gross. And while he's doing it, we've got Phoenix literally doing tightrope runs. Have you ever seen anybody do it like him?
No.
He'll jump up on the rope with his right foot in front of the left. He'll straddle the top and land on the second rope. He'll jump up and land on the top rope. He'll go back down and land with both feet on the second rope in the other direction. He'll get back on the top rope. He'll run about 5 or 6 steps and kick you in your mouth. He's incredible.
It's just people. I don't think people are really appreciating what these guys are bringing to the table here, and it's like, dude, this is a different wrestling world. Okay, this isn't 1996, 97 anymore.
This is video game shit.
A lot, yeah, yeah, exactly. Everything you wish you could ever do, these guys are doing. So don't be haters.
No.
Just enjoy it for what it is.
And I mean, I'm speaking in a little bit of hyperbole because clearly I'm a huge fan, but I'm going to challenge you. You show me, oh God, I'm about to say it. Let's put Will Ospreay on the shelf for a hot second.
Right.
Outside of the ungodly talent of one Will Ospreay, is there a better high flyer with a well-rounded wrestling game than Ray Phoenix right now? I can't think of one.
The only person that I could say who really has impressed me, even though when he was in WWE, I was not a huge fan because of the way they booked him. But since joining All Elite, and not just because, I'm an All Elite fanboy, but legitimately have started to like what he's about because it feels more natural as Pac. Dude, when they booked him as the man that gravity forgot, I was like, okay, you're going to give him a freaking purse too? I was just like, what are you doing with this guy? First of all, he's not the most, he's got a very unique look to him. Okay, so it's...
Not if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings.
What say you? Listen, Legolas is my boy. And,
I love Legolas.
I know, Pac, hailing from the Woodland Realm, for real. But, ever since, I just thought it was a very cheesy way to book a guy who could just do all these incredible acrobatic maneuvers off the top rope and land them with precision. And what was it? What did he pull off? A 460 off the apron
Yeah,
on
the 450
Moxley?
on the ground, yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
That is not easy, and I'm scared to just do a front flip off of something from that height. This dude absolutely perfect.
Yep.
And on the ground, too. And it was just, again, I think that's the only one, the high flyer, who I'd say would come close right now.
Yeah.
That's the guy who's right there, too. And like I said, I really liked him since joining AEW.
Yep.
He's not cheesy anymore. He's not the anti-gravity boy.
No, you know what he is? He got chewed up by the WWE system, and he is pissed. He was never like that before.
Right.
Back in his old days, he didn't have this kind of grit and grime. Now he's the bastard.
Yeah, but that's real emotion. That's playing into real emotion.
Yeah.
That's adding to the validity of who he is now.
His character work now is stellar. I think he's so fun to watch.
I enjoy watching him now. Now I enjoy all around his ability and his personality. I think it's great.
Yep.
The next two guys on my list are teams that, at first it felt like one of the team members was the clear consummate performer and entertainer. And when I originally, if you were to look back 6 years ago and look at my number 8 and number 7 pick, you'd say, yep, one out of these two guys on each team is obviously the top guy. But recently, that's actually kind of changed my mind. So I'll get into 8. Easily, they're probably one of the most treasured or garnished tag teams of all time. They've probably won the tag team titles more than, I don't know. As far as I think as far as one individual group or organization, I think they've held the tag titles more than anybody else. And Stevie Ray and Booker T, the Harlem Heat, huge guys. Booker T obviously was the main attraction of the two. Booker T had the talent.
Yeah, no question.
I mean, that guy was just a beast, and the way he moved, it was intimidating. And I mean, the guy's probably a foot taller than I am, easily, and he was intimidating in the ring. But as a tag team, that is one big intimidating team to go up against.
He was actually the small guy on that team.
I know, because Stevie Ray was bigger,
Yeah.
in terms of weight, but I even think his height as well.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy was girthy, and
I saw a couple of veins on
right.
him there.
And not only that, but also being accompanied to the ring by Sensational Sherry as well, or Sister Sherry as she was known back then. But still having that kind of manager in your corner while being a devastating tag. I mean, they were 10-time WCW tag champions.
10 times.
We're coming for you.
I was just going to say, it might be my favorite detail about that tag team is the interview.
Yeah.
Now, we gotta be real careful with this topic.
Listen, I'm not going to say it.
You better not say it. I'm not going to say it.
But here's the thing. And Booker T is probably, that's like anytime anybody interviews him,
Do you know
they're
what I'm talking
like, so the interview
Do you not know the interview?
with Booker
There was
T.
a thing
I'm letting
back in
y'all
WCW.
go into this one. I'm just gonna watch.
Oh dear God.
Well, we can't
I'll
really
do it. I'll be very careful about this. So it was during a live pay-per-view. I don't remember what the circumstances were, but we had Harlem Heat doing a live interview with Sensational Sherry, and Booker T was expressing intensely his displeasure with one Hulk Hogan. And he got so into character in the moment, he kind of lost himself. And he uttered the now infamous phrase, "We're coming for you, N-word." And he immediately grabbed his own face as if to say, "I really liked being a pro wrestler. Fuck." And they kind of quickly kicked it over to Stevie Ray and let him kind of blunder for a minute. And you could see Sherry literally patting him on the back, going, no, it's okay. It's fine.
Right.
It's going to be fine.
And I think he tries to cover his tracks too, because and Mean Gene plays it off perfectly. Mean Gene doesn't even allow the idea that word was just spoken to even affect the way he delivers, because Mean Gene's
Constant professional.
Yes.
Mean Gene is a constant professional.
But
Unless you have signs falling near him, he is a constant professional.
right. But then you see Booker T go, sucker, try to make up for it. Like, no, we heard you, man.
No.
Look it up.
And-
Just look it up on YouTube.
And
Yeah.
it is the most
Then I'll
one
watch
of the
the Hulk
most
one.
infamous tag team shoot promos of all time, because it's like he's explained before. He's like, we grew up in a pretty loose neighborhood, and there was a lot of slang and cursing So, in that moment, you're living this, you're expressing yourself in this way that's very real. So when you're getting into that comfort zone, you're just going to say what comes natural to you. And it's so funny. It's one of the funniest interviews I've ever seen. And it's the perfect blend of me and Gene going, all right, going to Stevie Ray. And
there's just
not
nanosecond.
even phased.
He
And
went from like perfect intensity to like,
he covers his face. He's like, I just said the N-word.
I'm glad
pay-per-view.
to. Thank you, Booker T.
It was on a pay-per-view?
Yeah, it was on a
So it
pay-per-view.
was live.
Oh,
There was
okay.
no editing
Well,
to be
and,
done.
Hey, I mean, Turner would have gotten some attention for that, I'm sure, if it was just regular on TNT broadcast.
Right. I do find it very ironic and funny that not the fact that McMahon said the N-word on national television, but the fact that as he's walking away, it pans to Booker T, and he's like, tell me he didn't just say that. And it's like, yeah, well,
Yeah.
But regardless, like I said, I think the Harlem Heat are up there. I mean, 10-time WCW champions. These guys were big. They were talented. Stevie Ray, obviously, lesser of the two, a little bit less, I guess flamboyance, because Booker T just had that kind of personality. I think Stevie Ray was the hard muscle of the group, whereas Booker T could do a little bit more of the acrobatic. And with that acrobatic style, would just deliver. I mean, the scissor kick to the back of the head and the spinneroonie and all that stuff. But he just had the the lifting leg to the. I really like that move too.
What's that?
When he would clothesline him with his leg.
Oh yeah, the kind of
The
spinning.
scissor, kind of the scissor kick.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was basically like a scissor kick. He would do one to the back of your head, but he'd also throw you to the ropes and do it also and deliver one to
it's
your
almost
chest.
like a back kick, but just like whip his leg across your chest.
Basically.
Yeah.
And, again, I think those two as a team were a really strong team. And you've seen a lot of tag teams like that where, there's one guy who kind of stands out from the two who goes on and succeeds. And there's a couple of teams like that.
No, I've got one for you too, actually. And these were opponents of the team you're talking about. We're right here in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and not that far down the road is the University of Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
So, of course, my next team is none other than the dog-faced gremlin and the big bad booty daddy. Holla, if you hear him. Talking about the Steiner brothers.
The Steiner brothers, Michigan made.
Dude, can we just talk for a minute about how many jobbers were hospitalized because of the Steiners? My God.
Yeah.
How many kills do they have? Legal homicides. How many do they have?
Infinite.
They had what was their tag team finisher? Because I can't remember. I know it was extremely dangerous.
The one I remember mostly was when it was almost like they were setting up for the Doomsday device, which is what the Road Warriors used.
Right.
So Scotty would put the man on his shoulders, turn his back to the turnbuckle. Rick would get on the top rope and jump off with a bulldog.
Oh, yeah, that's scary.
That was one for a while. It's the big one I remember.
And I think, God, I remember there was one, Rick Steiner hit like he had the Frankensteiner.
The Frankensteiner, you mean the Hurricane Lana?
Yeah, exactly.
No. It's the Frankensteiner.
Right, where
Hurricane Lana?
almost broke his neck multiple times. Because you would throw the guy to the ropes, jump up, and hit him with the Hurricane Rana. So
just standing straight. He would also set the guy up on the top rope. He would. He was the guy who. I know he didn't invent it because I didn't live in Mexico. I'm sure it was happening decades ahead of time.
Right, exactly.
But for a guy who looked like frickin' Scott Steiner, who looks like a wrestling action figure on steroids,
right,
to stand on the top rope and just do a jumping Hurricane Rana was completely mind blowing at the time. We're talking 90s.
Yeah, there were very few big guys who were super agile in the ring. I don't think anyone any more than Vader. I think Vader is probably the biggest, most agile guy in professional wrestling history. When you're looking in terms of size and what you're able to do, he's one of the main ones. But Steiner, though, he was big build.
Steiner was just freaky,
a beast, and it was super cool always to see. I got to give some props that you threw that in your top 10 because I always thought it was really cool to see them come out in University of Michigan jackets.
Yeah,
because I was always a U of M kid growing up, and they've. Not only the school, but the hospital has gained so much of my respect, in the last few decades as well. It was just really cool to just see them come out and repping Michigan like that. You know, it was a cool experience. And yeah, again, a tag team that you just look at them and they're just one of those great combo tag teams that's got like that package to them where they're like real guys, they're real wrestlers, but they're also professional wrestlers. And yeah, they're a hell of a team.
You know, it was funny for a little while before we move on. You know, we're talking about looking at Harlem Heat, and you knew Booker T was going to be the breakout.
Right.
It's pretty clear, right? Rick Steiner had a bit of a reputation as a solo wrestler for quite
Yeah.
a while, even before Scotty came up and made the tag team. Rick had a reputation in the old NWA and the UWF, which is a small southern territory that got absorbed by WCW.
Yeah.
But that little fed had a lot of cool people, too. That's where Eddie Gilbert came from.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Terry Taylor came up. Sting started
word.
down there.
Yeah.
So-
That was back when Sting was teamed with Warrior.
Hellwig. Yeah,
Hellwig,
totally.
Yeah.
So I mean, the Dogface Gremlin already had a bit of a reputation through then. And when Scott showed up, he had the worst 80s metal hair in the history. Do you remember how puffy and
definitely-
just like,
He definitely listened to like Motley Crue
dude?
for sure.
Yeah, that was
Not
like
that
that
there's
was like
anything wrong with
lying.
that.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to get into all that. But so when he
Then.
disappeared for a week or so, and he showed up with the platinum buzz, and all of a sudden he had the black soul patch.
Oh, yeah.
And he's talking about hoes and booty daddies. I was just like, what
Yeah.
what has happened to the world?
He went off and he really started going off on the mic, and I really wonder how much of that was like cleared with WCW creative. So let's just start with none. Going on the mic and saying change the channel and watch Stone Cold Steve Austin because WCW sucks. I was like, man, way to sell your product, man. That's great promotion right there.
Jump on YouTube and just look up Steiner Math.
Oh yeah,
Oh my God,
gosh.
Steiner
Just look up
Math.
Steiner Math.
Oh my
I yelled
gosh.
that at a
And just
coworker
even
last
like
week.
some of his like YouTube videos of him freaking out.
Oh, there are also
Just-
videos called Steiner versus the English language. You should look up.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, they're incredible.
No, they were a solid team. I tell you, I will echo half of what you said in the sense of like they were a solid team. I am scared of that Scott Steiner man.
Yeah.
I will say that. But that Hurricane Lana is one heck of a move.
Right. Oh my God. So dwindling down to the bottom part of the first half of the list, back-to-back teams that I have going forward, highly acrobatic teams. Number 7 for me is Hardy Boys. You know, they're brought in by Doc Hendricks, who changed his name again. You know, changed his name back to his Michael Hayes, obviously.
P.S. Michael P.S. Hey,
Michael
purely
P.S.
sexy.
Hayes.
Purely sexy.
Hey, WWF fans, WWF is coming back to you live. Oh my God. Okay, first off, before I really get into the Hardy Boys, okay, I can't remember the exact. Oh my God. I'm showing this to you later. And if you're listening to this, freaking look it up. I don't think I've ever laughed hardest out of nowhere in wrestling. Doc Hendricks is a freaking genius for this. Okay. I don't know exactly what event it was, but I'm pretty sure it was Shawn Michaels defeating Jeff Jarrett for the Intercontinental title. Or perhaps actually it was Razor Ramon. But it was when the Road Dogg, Rhodey, yeah, I think it was Razor Ramon. He goes to hook Razor's leg as he gets thrown to the ropes, but Razor reverses it, and it's Jeff Jarrett who gets thrown, and the Rhodey no-looks a leg hook, and Jeff Jarrett's like, what the hell are you doing? He turns around, and I think he catches like the Razor's edge and loses or something. So afterwards, the Rhodey and Jeff Jarrett are getting into it, apparently. And they're like, let's go back. We're going to go back in the locker room. We've got Doc Hendricks waiting by. And Doc Hendricks does this shoot interview with himself outside of a closed door. I've never seen anything like it. And Jeff Jarrett starts pushing the Rhodey. And then the Rhodey starts pushing Jeff Jarrett. And he's freaking out like that for like a solid 40 to 60 seconds. And it's the funniest thing. And meanwhile, nothing is happening. He's standing in front of a closed door. And he's selling this huge controversial thing. Oh my God, it is so goddamn funny. And Doc Hendricks, That is probably the coolest thing he ever did for me. I remember watching it and I was like, oh, sweet. And then he just starts freaking out. And I don't know why. I just thought it was hilarious how crazy he's going. I'm like, but nothing's happening. Like you're just standing there. It was, I have to show it to you. It's
That's
so
the
damn
art
funny.
of announcing in WWE.
Oh my God.
Get really
It is
excited
so,
about a whole lot of nothing.
it is so funny. He sells it perfectly, like it seriously happened. It was so impressive. But regardless, he was kind of responsible for Hardy Boys. He again, they wanted to put a solid managerial, one of the most infamous tag teams, and it's really hard when you're locking down the best tag teams in wrestling, because the Freebirds weren't necessarily a tag team; they were a faction because there was 3 of them.
Yeah, they kind of did the New Day thing way back. They were the creators of that.
They were the innovators of the 3-man team, and I mean, what was it? NWA who had a 6-man tag team championship belt.
They did. WCCW had one way back in the day in Texas, but they definitely had one in NWA. Yeah.
But Doc Hendricks or Michael Hayes, regardless, having that name behind you, that's huge. And when the Hardy Boys started off, they took a lot of hits and everything, but when they started to get more extreme, I mean, when you're looking at some of the best tag team matches of all time, you really have to put Edge and Christian, Hardy Boys, and Dudley Boys 3-way tables, ladders, and chairs match at WrestleMania 2000 up there.
I'd just would clap.
I mean, both of them, both of the TLC matches that they had together. I mean,
WrestleMania 17 is like the match.
Exactly. That one was even a step up from the year before.
Didn't they have to go on to Monday Night Raw the next night and replicate that same fucking match? Like Vince was like, that was good.
Do it again.
Do it again.
Was that after their second big match, or was that after their first? Because they had the one on pay-per-view.
Yeah, they had the one on pay-per-view.
That was like WrestleMania 15 or 16, maybe?
16 was 2000.
Okay.
WrestleMania 2000 is what they called it.
Yeah. Then I'm not 100% sure. I know the big one, the one that we always see, the clip of Jeff Hardy hanging from the title.
Oh,
and
that
doing
is at
the
17.
Dive from the ladder.
And
that's that
the
iconic
next
moment.
night they had to do it.
That's crazy.
Unbelievable. And here's the thing. I always had a respect for Jeff Hardy, because I was like, man, that guy did a lot of stuff that nobody else would have thought of doing. And he really put his body on the line. And I always felt bad for Matt, because it always felt like Matt got the short end of the stick, and then he really got screwed over when Edge started sleeping with Lita, and it was just like, it was such an ugly thing, ugly personal thing to happen, and then he went through personal struggles, and then something amazing happened, and I don't know if I've ever seen a transition like this in wrestling before, where you had a guy he never really created any buzz as a solo. He had the Matt Hardy Volume 2 or whatever the trash it was, or 1.5. Version 2, and it was just like, that never really took off, and it was just kind of really, really cheesy and just never worked. But when he lost, I truly feel like when he hit rock bottom in life, he had this epiphany, and he came back, and this whole broken angle that they set up in TNA with him and Jeff was one of the most naturally funny things. I remember watching, I think we were at Jake's house, and we were watching this whole production. It was a match, but it looked like a movie, and I was just laughing the whole time, because I'm like, this is freaking great.
What was
this
that
is
called?
so
Was
funny.
it like the Total Elimination?
Yes, it was the Total Elimination.
Yeah.
It was the ranch or whatever, yeah.
And I gotta be honest with you, I've never
Davidian.
felt this way about a tag team before, but I was like, you know what? I like Matt better now. I was like, this is freaking great.
Yeah.
And
Excellent.
it's funny, because he really found, in my opinion, his wrestling character. And sometimes in wrestling, it's hard, because you want to be a character, and the age of the character is, it's almost old. Well, if you're looking at WWE, everybody's got to be real, even though everyone's got a reality TV show. And everybody's got to be real, and they got to be themselves. And the age of the character is kind of gone. And I really, it's something that I'd like to see come back, because when Matt Hardy came back as broken Matt Hardy, I was like, that's hilarious. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, it's that little bit of wrestling magic where it's like, I know it's not real, but it's real.
There's a mythos. I
There's-
still believe.
You know what I'm saying? And that's what I'm saying. It was very much like, I truly believe what he's selling me right now.
Yeah.
And that's when I had a newfound respect for Matt Hardy, because I was like, that is really cool. That you can go through a lot of those personal struggles and come through it not only better on the other end, but then you create this character, which is freaking hilarious and awesome and over the top, but very believable at the same time. And again, the fans will always tell you if you're doing something right. And when you've got, 16,000 people going, died, it's like, dude, you already did it. You just did it.
Did anybody else get nervous, even though we already knew what the delete thing was about? Did anybody else get nervous when the rise of Trump was occurring in North America, and then the delete thing was happening in wrestling stadiums?
Yeah.
That looked real suspect.
Yeah.
Eh,
It was, a little nervous.
maybe that was just
I've
me.
seen Pink
I don't
Floyd
know.
to the wall. I was seeing them getting really close, but the moment I started seeing the arm go too high, that's when we start
That made
raising
me-
the too
that
much
made me
attention. Be
nervous.
like, all right,
Yeah.
Right. It's like, don't cross that halfway mark.
you're
Just keep that level.
You're at chest level.
We're going 90 degrees. Don't
We're
go
going-
past 90.
yeah.
You're above the shoulder. We've got conversation.
But in general, I think the Hardy Boys, they did a lot of stuff, including with weapons and ladders and stuff that was really innovative. I liked the when they would get down on all hands and knees and Jeff would run
Yeah.
and jump off the back and do a suicide splash into the corner. I thought that was really cool. The senton bomb, and then the twist of fate too, even though the twist of fate was a different take on the diamond cutter, but still cool the way he pulled it off. I thought it was cool that they finished with the twist of fate into the senton bomb, where
Yeah.
they did a lot of tag team stuff together, but it was two individual efforts that made the team. And I think Hardy Boys, in my opinion, deserve to be on that list for sure, for what they've put themselves through and who they become in the end. And like I said, I think it's sweet that Matt was able to find himself as a character and come out not being a Stevie Ray of the group,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. Now, they didn't make my list. I mean, clearly they're super influential, but
Right.
I was just, I figured they'd be on your list. I was just trying to look for some other things outside the norm, maybe. This one is not outside the norm, and I think most people would probably agree that you don't have a Hardy Boys without this particular team. Now, I was born in 1922. People don't seem to realize that. So I have been watching wrestling for a really long time. I grew up and I was actually watching the old WCCW down in Texas. They had an ESPN show every afternoon for a very long time. I'm talking like elementary school from
Wow.
the early mid 80s. And after that show, you could sometimes catch AWA out of Minnesota.
Yeah.
Yeah.
AWA is where I saw these guys wrestling for the first time, and I believe it was against the old Nasty Boys, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly.
Oh.
But I'm talking about Sean and Marty, the Rockers.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people, I try to think back to their whole career in WWE, and I can kind of see a couple pictures in my head of them wrestling like the Twin Towers, which was Akeem
Right.
and was it the Big Boss Man he was teamed with?
Yeah,
this
yeah.
time?
Keem and the Big Boss Man.
Yeah, so they're kind of like the underdog team, and they were doing a lot of innovative, high-risk maneuvers. I remember them doing that double fist drop from opposite corners coming off the top
Yeah.
rope to a guy in the middle.
Yep.
We look back at it now, it's not super impressive, but for the mid-'80s into the early '90s, they were really pushing the boundaries.
Yeah, and that was the era of the big guys. Everybody's big, everybody's a grounded wrestler. Very few guys were coming off the top rope and doing things, especially as athletic as they were.
Yeah, and a lot of people obviously remember, when Sean went on his own.
Yeah.
And there was that notorious episode of the barber shop.
Yeah.
The barbershop, of course. And he threw Marty's head through the plate glass, and that was it. Here's the beginning of the sexy boy gimmick. A lot of people don't realize Marty is more than a little older than Sean, at least, I'd say about 5 years. Sean was paired with Marty intentionally because people saw something in Sean early on.
Yeah.
And they thought with Marty having a little bit more steam and time on the road, pair him up and let him kind of show him the way.
Absolutely. And that's exactly why they're also the next team on my list is number 6.
Cool.
Because, again, if you watch that Shawn Michaels documentary that they made a while back, I don't know if it's called The Boyhood Dream or whatever, but they do talk about that where I think Sherry talks about how they'd be in the back and they'd be playing with their action figures with the ring, and people thought it was like goofy, but what they were doing was they were planning moves together.
Yeah,
they
that's
were
cool.
like, if we can do it with the toys, we can do it in real life, and that was their mentality going in. And it was a shame that the one time they won the tag team matches, the tag team titles, it was a house show. It was a Superstars, so it was pre-recorded, and I don't know if you ever saw, but the top rope broke, and it was between the Hart Foundation and the Rockers.
I do remember that.
And the top rope broke. And so they had to wrestle this terrible match with the top rope broken. They won the match. They won the belts. They left with the belts. And then McMahon decided that we can't have tag team titles change on a broken rope.
Yep.
You know, the match just looked like crap. They couldn't do anything really. So they decided to just knock it out like it never existed. So unfortunately, the Rockers were never WWF Tag Team Champions, even though at the time they were one of the most exciting tag teams in the WWF, which is unfortunate because they, you know, you could easily have made a case that they could have been multiple time tag champions, but they just never got that opportunity, which sucked. And then, you know, obviously things changed, and you were right. Jannetty actually had a lot of steam behind him, and you know, they had announced, this was when, too, they were open about guys coming in. And I remember in that documentary, they have footage of Jannetty talking about, you know, there's a guy that's going to come up here, you know, Shawn Michaels. I really think, you know, we're going to work together as a team, and I really think we could do some big stuff down here. And they really did. You look at some of those tag teams, and even back then, they came out and they were developing themselves, and they were, you know, kind of had that mythos about them that they were kind of partiers, but they brought that into the ring too, and they wrestled the part as well.
Yep.
So yeah, absolutely, they have to be included on the list. They're, again, and you know, Shawn Michaels, I mean, one of the biggest entertainers, you know, wrestling has ever seen.
Can I, just real quick, this is a different issue, but you talked about them winning the titles and then having to give them back because of the ring breaking. You know, we know that wrestling, well, there's a theory that wrestling's a work.
Yeah.
You know,
Hey.
opinions vary. I'm not saying anything. I'm just passing along news. So it's interesting for me, though, that we think about guys who, some people really live the character. Warrior.
Yeah.
And then we have other people who acknowledge that it's a job. You know,
Yeah.
I show up to my job, I do my job. But almost anybody who's there, and especially at that level, has dreamed for decades about winning the world title or winning the tag team titles.
Yeah.
And have it taken away is pretty sad. That reminds me of Jake the Snake Roberts talking about the fact that he was put in that position to warm guys up for Hogan. And he was very open about this. You know, I'm that last door for big heels to pass through before he put him up into the main event against Hogan.
Yeah.
Sometime around there where the Ultimate Warrior, I think, had taken the title and he was the champ.
Yeah.
They finally talked and they're like, okay, this is it, Jake. We're going to put you in a main event storyline against Warrior, thinking about even putting the title on you, if I remember this correctly.
Yeah.
And then the Warrior held up Vince for that money at SummerSlam. And then he got
Right.
fired. And I remember Jake talking about it like, I've been waiting all these years. Here's this huge opportunity. And then something completely out of his control happens behind the scenes. And it like irreversibly affects a person's career.
Yeah.
People don't ever think about that kind of stuff because you see what's on TV. But
Yeah.
just little things like that are weird. Totally change the trajectory of people's careers. And,
Yeah.
and then, you know, companies' storylines altogether.
That was when Flair interfered. That was when Flair interfered, and then he lost the title to Sergeant Slaughter, right?
Maybe
At SummerSlam.
Yes.
Because that set up
Yes.
the USA, because they were going to do WrestleMania at the Coliseum in LA, which was going to break the attendance record. It apparently could have held 110,000 people, but because of the controversy, everything that was going down in Iraq at the time, and the fact that Sergeant Slaughter was an ex-Marine now praising Saddam Hussein and burning Hulk Hogan's T-shirt on television, he was getting death threats, and they were like, for security reasons, we can't do it at the Coliseum, so they moved it to an indoor event, and I think that's what led up to Hogan winning the title back. But yeah, that sucks. It's unfortunate. You know, Jake's paying his dues, and
Just weird
because-
little things.
yeah.
Yep.
Has the Miz ever had the world championship?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
he
just think-
defended against Cena at that WrestleMania.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, that's right. That's
The
right.
Rock.
That's,
That's when The Rock really made his big debut
Yeah.
in that line.
I was just thinking, you know, that man. Not that Jake the Snake Roberts or the Miz are the same, but
Right.
I'm just thinking that man does put over and keeps working a lot of folks.
Yeah.
Day in, day out. Hard worker.
Yep. Well, Ms. and Mrs. There's his payoff.
He does need a snake, though.
Right.
So you just did your rockers.
Yeah.
I don't even know if anybody else was into early Ring of Honor, like early 2000s. That was one of the things that I got into because of that lull in WWE programming.
Yeah.
Now, just like you heard about Omega Okada,
Yeah.
back at this time, I was hearing about CM Punk and Samoa Joe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They had a
Wow.
notorious trilogy of matches in Ring of
Yeah.
Honor over about a 6-month time span.
That's interesting.
Put them both on the map.
That was a solid set.
Oh my God. And just like we were talking about Jim Ross's track record of bringing in all these huge wrestlers, I didn't plan this, but just off the top of my head, let me rip you a list of people who came from Ring of Honor who are now household names in WWE. Start with CM Punk.
Yep.
Got Samoa Joe. We had, what was his name? Claudio Castagnoli, who is now Cesaro.
Yep.
We got AJ Styles.
Indeed.
Help me out. Who else? There's some bigger names that used to bump around back then. We got Roderick Strong. Everybody in the Undisputed Era is from Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
So like, there's an
Daniel
entire...
Bryan.
Yeah, so, God, right,
Tyler
Daniel Bryan.
Black, who's
Yep.
also now known as what's-his-face?
Alistair Black?
No,
Or
Tyler
no.
Black.
Tyler
is,
Black
Seth
was
Rollins.
Seth Rollins.
Oh, right.
He was a Ring of Honor world champion back
Yep.
in the day.
And what's-his-face was over there? Kenny Omega. He did a little bit back in the day, too.
Oh,
I
yeah, that's
saw him
true.
match.
Yeah, he kind of dipped in and out a little bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, as a federation, they pumped out a lot of
Yeah,
talent.
no doubt.
And so from that time era, there was a little group of youngsters who were coming up, which also included Alex Shelley, Austin Aries, Roderick Strong, and one of my all-time favorites, Jack Evans.
Oh, okay.
They were a
Wow.
team called Generation Next. This was early 2000s again, Ring of Honor.
I don't think I ever caught them.
Yeah, so the tag team of Roderick Strong and Jack Evans were Generation Next, and they were Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champs for a while. So I'm a huge fan of Roderick Strong. I mean, he's another guy that Vince doesn't think much of probably because of his stature.
Yeah.
Now, when I was young and I liked to play wrestling in my backyard, my finishing move was going to be the backbreaker. Like, forget about it. I'm just
Yeah.
going to impale a human. I'm just going to break your spine on
Right.
my knee, right? If you've ever watched a Roderick Strong match, do yourself a favor and just start keeping track of how many different variations of backbreakers he'll hit on you during that match. I'm going to open with a backbreaker. I'm going to arm drag you into a backbreaker. I'm going to throw you out of the ring, give you a backbreaker on the ring post. I'm going to bring you back in, and I'm going to finish you with a backbreaker. I love it. And so if you paired him, like he was small of stature, but super duper strong. And then Jack Evans is just made out of, I mean, he's like the human Gumby.
Yeah.
He's in AEW now, teaming with Angelico. And I cannot remember what the name of their tag team is off the top of my head. But they're the ones who wear the obnoxious, like, Mountain Dew green and black outfits.
Oh, yeah, okay. I
You know
feel
what I'm
you.
talking about.
That were sitting next to Orange Cassidy a couple
Yes.
weeks ago.
Jack Evans is the smaller guy with the blonde ponytail who never stops talking shit. This
Very
guy,
bright
yeah,
eyes.
he to me is still kind of a prototype for that kind of flippy dippy,
Yeah.
no bones in your body, fluid. And he's been doing it for close to 20 years now.
That's wild.
Yeah,
Wow.
I ask anybody to go back and look at their early stuff from Ring of Honor. Generation Next.
For sure.
Yep.
Well, now we're crossing that hump when we're in the top 5. And this is where it gets a little difficult. And again, a little bit choosy because we're all a little bit opinionated about who we look up to and who made a big impact. And I think that's really what it comes down to, really when it comes to the top 3. Which tag teams made the most impact on you? So really the top 5 are it's a mixture of who made the most impact on me, but also I think who made the biggest impact on wrestling at the time. So number 5 is, for my pick, has got to go to the Dudley Boys. You know, what they did in ECW and the fact that they, you know, as the Dudley family had a whole crew of people with them, and how they would literally get in people's faces and trash them, and at times use some really derogatory things that, you know, they look back on, they're not too proud of. But again, you're young, you're hungry, you're willing to do anything to be different from everybody else. And on top of that, I still feel like when it comes to finishers, the Dudley Death Drop is the coolest.
So good.
The coolest finisher.
3D.
3D, the way they set it up, the way they called for it, the way they would just do it to people through tables, like
Yep.
it was like it was tradition.
Yep.
Dudley Boys, and again, big guys who took big bumps, and again, I think they just had it. They had the style, they had the personality, and they were two guys who it was kind of like, separate. They were never going to do anything amazing. Not that they aren't amazing athletes, but I think together they're one of those ideal package tag teams. And to me, that's what kind of stands out as a tag team, is the fact that two guys that separate aren't going to shock the world, so to speak, but together are a complete package. Like that to me has always been the definition of a tag team. So a lot of, I'd say 4 out of the top 5 are very much like that, because that's just the way I look at tag teams.
Yeah.
There have been some incredible tag teams. I mean, you can't just sit there and go, when you're talking about great tag teams, the Brothers of Destruction, Undertaker and Kane. Okay, these two guys are huge, and they're extremely successful on their own. Yep. That is a devastating tag team combination. The way my mind works, though, is more of I try to think of natural tag teams. Two guys who separate aren't going to do a whole lot of stuff in the grand. No one's going to remember singles matches that they've had necessarily, but as tag matches, they've got the chemistry. So that's why they made my list.
Well, yeah, so let me just take you back a little bit. I'm going to set the scene for you. It's 1998. My friend Brian, he was my roommate at the time, we agreed we were going to go to the ECW show over in Detroit. It was a house show, maybe about 3,000 people.
Oh, man.
And, we were already big fans, and I knew who the Dudley Boys were. To see them live, and again, this is before they were getting like the big TV show on TNA or whatever, the channel they wound up on. They got some crappy cable channel show.
TNT or something.
TNT,
yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
But so before that, TNN, thank you. Before that happened, they were still just getting those 2 a.m. weird spots. So they're still getting away with some dirt that wasn't going to be allowed on, primetime TV. So it was kind of the same old drill. Here came the Dudley Boys. I was blown away at how much they kind of embraced that deep South, early 80s, real heat psychology.
Right.
They weren't just trying to be funny. They weren't trying to sell anything. It was clear to me, Bubba Ray Dudley was not going to be happy until somebody stabbed him. Like, he was not going to be done that night until blood had been shed. And I watched him get in people's faces in the front row. I mean, and he's made variations of this speech in different shows, but when I watched him 50 feet from me with no security around him talk to a 10-year-old girl, and this is going to be real off color.
Yeah.
And mind you, reality warps when you get into professional wrestling. So
right.
Let's just put that out there, because I am not in favor of what I'm about to say. But when Bubba gets into a girl's face and says, "You look like you learned to suck a from your mother," and this place explodes with beers flying at this man's head, people trying to climb over that gate. You got Devon running up behind him, backing him up. I mean, my friend and I high-five him. This is wrestling in 1998. Oh. It was the wildest. And it would have been one thing if it was just him running his mouth. But like you said, they absolutely delivered. And they weren't doing flips. They weren't putting on, any kind of spot fest, anything. They were impactful. They had, perfectly timed tag team maneuvers that they put together. In my opinion, best finisher of any tag team. And I didn't say this, and this could be controversial. Dudley Boys are my number 1 on my list.
Really?
Number 1, all-time favorite. I'll take it a step further. I think Bubba Ray Dudley is my all-time number 1 heel.
Oh. It's very hard to argue.
I'm
because,
not talking about money. I'm not talking about success. I'm talking about heel work.
Just true heel. And like I said, they really went out and grabbed heat. They would go out and they would say anything, and Bubba Ray said this before, I would go out and say anything I could to get people to want to kill me.
Oh, I saw it. They wanted to kill him.
And and that's truly fearless to do something like that. I got to be honest with you. I don't blame you for putting them at number 1, because they were so cool to love and so cool to hate at one point. Yeah. Actually, when I was in high school, it's totally off topic, but when I was in high school, we had to do a PowerPoint presentation, and me and my buddy Joe did a PowerPoint on the Dudley Boys. And I I took a picture of Devon holding someone's leg with the what's up headbutt, and I took a picture of the headbutt connecting, and what I did was I cut Bubba Ray out. So the opening, and mind you, this is PowerPoint. This is 2001. There's 2000. The PowerPoints, you saw the picture of Devon holding guys' legs, and then I made the other part of the picture of Bubba Ray fly in from the top right corner of the screen to connect with the headbutt. So as soon as I did that, we were laughing our ass off, and my teacher at the time, Ms. G, had no idea why it was so funny, but I was like, this automatically gets us an A. I was like, there's no better way to open up this PowerPoint presentation, Ms. G.
The Dudley Boys, educating the youth of America.
Indeed. No, but like I said, coolest finisher, and the fact that Bubba Ray Dudley literally would go out there and say anything and everything he could to get that audience to hate him and despise him. And that was before the bell rang.
Yep.
They just walk out there and just, so as good of as great of baby faces as they were in WWF and how people loved them, you go back in some of the old ECW stuff and you'll find a very different Dudley Boys, and just as devastating, if not even more, because of the setting that they were in.
They also hold an interesting little place in history because their very last match in ECW proper. So I don't know if they got mixed up in the WWE's reboot,
Right,
that
right.
abysmal abortion of a thing, but their last proper ECW match had them winning the tag team titles. And I can't remember who they won them from, but it was a beloved team.
Was Just Incredible a part of that match?
He was a heel all the way, maybe. But it was interesting because they won. They then turned to the crowd and said, hey, we're taking these titles with us. It was earlier, like when CM Punk was the world champion in Ring of Honor, he pulled the same move. I'm going to take this title.
Yeah,
I'm going
I
to
saw that
WWE. I'm going to sign the contract on this belt.
Yeah.
So they basically did a version of that.
Right.
Out came Tommy Dreamer, and I think
Raven.
Raven came in to do his return.
Yeah.
He and Dreamer had been feuding already for years. And now they're the tag team champions.
That's
they just
right.
hot-shot them in one match on their way out the door. Classy.
Way to blow people's minds, too.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, it's
after
real cool.
years and years of Raven and Tommy Dreamer and the storyline they set up between those two, now they're tag champions. And Raven, I remember Raven kind of looks at Dreamer like,
I remember
what the hell just happened?
He pushed the belt into his chest, and Tommy
Yeah.
was like, oh, God, no. Please.
Right.
Please, no. Not this. It was great. So, yeah. I mean, I just think everything they touched was gold. Dudley Boys for life.
Well, my number 4 on the list is a team that, again, I think when you're talking about late 80s, early 90s, very hard pressed to find a team that worked as well as they did together and did a phenomenal job carrying the WWF Tag Team Championships around. Jim the Animal Neidhart and Bret Hart, the Hart Foundation.
Yep, on my list as well.
Man, y'all are really hitting these. Yeah, I'm agreeing. I'm in agreement with a lot of these names.
It's very tough, and it's gonna, like I said, you get to the top 3 and now you're starting to get personal, and I was never a major fan.
Make this personal, brother.
Yeah, now it's personal. I was never crazy about the Hart Foundation as a Ute.
Did you say Ute?
What's a Ute?
I don't what did I say. I don't know what I
Sorry,
said.
youths.
Youths. As a kid, I acknowledged the fact that they were a great team, but for the most part, there was a very slim window when the Hart Foundation were actually baby faces. For the most part, they were billed as heels, and they had Danny Davis, the former referee who became part of a storyline where he actually backstabbed one of the tag teams and kind of was embraced by the Hart Foundation as well. I think this was around 87 at WrestleMania 3.
Yeah, they were all under Jimmy Hart at the time.
Yeah, Jimmy Hart. So Jimmy Hart was a huge heel
Jimmy
manager
Hart. He's an
at the
interesting
time.
character.
And so Hart Foundation for a while were actually booked as heels, but they were so good in the ring. Again, but I think back then too, managers, your managerial alignment, you didn't have to do much talking, because in the 80s, managers were, if you had a manager, there was a good reason for it, because they had the mouth, they had the style, they had everything you needed to get over either as a heel or a baby face. They did all the talking. You didn't really have to say much. But the Hart Foundation really sold being heels in a very charismatic way where they weren't overly bad. You know, they did just enough dirty stuff, which Bret Hart wasn't used to. You know, Bret Hart was very much like, you know, he comes from the Hart family. He's very respected.
Yeah, up in Stampede, he was always a baby face. It was kind of like the Von Erichs when they were down in WCCW.
Yeah,
exactly.
The Hart family was like that in Calgary.
Exactly. So when he came to WWF and they wanted to pose him as a heel, he had a really hard time doing that by himself. And when he brought Anvil into the picture and they began working as a tag team, it just became natural that they were just, like I said, they didn't do a whole lot to be heels, but they did just enough, and they had the talent to carry them, and they were easily, you know, the best tag team around. That's why they held the tag titles so much. That's why they were in the tag title run for so long, as long as they had done it for you know, 4 or 5 years. It's a long time to just primarily be a tag team. It was, you know, Bret Hart got his first world title at what, 93, I think it was. So
It was maybe a couple years. Well, yes, the way I understand it is, so he came out of the tag team division. I don't know if there were plans for him to become Intercontinental Champion, but in short order, he became one.
I believe him and Perfect were really good friends,
That's
and
right.
Perfect was very interested in
Yep.
working with Bret.
So he really went up the ranks as a mid-card champion. And then he really blew the roof off the joint, though, when he passed the Intercontinental title off to Davey Boy Smith from the British Bulldogs
Which is a
at
whole
Wembley Stadium.
Funny,
And that feeds in. I'm not going to get into it, but
Yeah.
the British Bulldogs are the next one on my list. So
Nice,
we can
absolutely.
move directly into it.
Yeah.
But that was a great example of him losing and dropping the belt to Davey Boy, but making him look like $10 million.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
And then Brett getting the nod. Okay, you're
And-
the world champion now.
and what a cool pin that was. The reversal where Bret Hart goes for a sunset flip,
Yep.
lifts his leg up for leverage, and Davey Boy hooks both legs and leans forward.
Yep. And Davey Boy weighed about 300 and 400 pounds of muscle at the time.
Place just went insane in his home country too. That was just again a classy thing. But it doesn't surprise me that British Bulldogs are on your team, because another powerhouse team from the 80s that just
Well, they fit the perfect prototype. So, you know, you had Bret Hart was kind of the mover and the wrestler. You had the Anvil, who was the cackler and the muscle of the
right,
group.
exactly.
Well, so then you had the Bulldogs. You had Davey Boy Smith as the big brute, and you had one of my all-time faves as a kid. Doing this list really made me realize how much of a work rate whore I've always been.
Oh, yeah.
The Dynamite Kid
Yeah.
was just
Absolutely.
groundbreaking
Yeah.
at the time.
Yeah. And it's tough too, because you see where, you know, some of the stuff that came out after the fact, and
Oh yeah, he's had a hard life.
a lot of the rumored things that have taken place, but just who he is now, and like at the end of his, you know, it's sad to see what wrestling can do to people. You know, how you can be on top of the world at any given moment, and now, you know, you're in a wheelchair with a pin sticking out of your toe. And
Well, and let's be fair too. I mean, it's not like they were exactly screening people for steroid or drug use back at the time.
oh, no doubt, yeah, and
If
he's
we-
open to that totally.
If you look back and you take a look at what Dynamite and Davey looked like going into WrestleMania 3, I mean, they're both huge, but specifically Dynamite, because
Yeah.
how short he was, he looked like a sausage skin crammed full of way too much sausage.
Right.
He had that cobra neck, like there was no neck.
Yeah.
Traps just attached to the top of his head like a kite. He never stopped moving. And here's the thing, like they were so wrapped up in muscle. It's smart as a pro wrestler. Like people want to get body specific or whatever. But I think you can objectively agree that the more muscle you have on your frame, the more it's going to help with the impact when you're taking bumps and stuff
No
like
doubt.
that.
Yeah.
So in the moment, he may not have noticed all this damage that was accruing, but you can't stay that muscular forever.
Exactly.
And eventually your joints are going to tell you, like, yo, you fucked up.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then here he is. But yeah, so as a team, I mean, was there a more beloved team in WWF at the time than the British Bulldogs? And
they had so much love from especially the American audience too. But when they worked the angle of Bobby Heenan being scared of Matilda,
he was
the
stealing
bulldog,
Matilda, got
stealing
kidnapped.
Matilda, when they got her back, like fans used to care about the most minimalistic things back then. And when the British Bulldogs got their dog back,
Dude,
like the crowd was just literally enthused beyond words and definition. They were going crazy.
I would argue that Matilda was on par with Miss Elizabeth at
No
the
doubt.
time.
No doubt.
People
and it's
were
crazy.
really concerned about both of them.
They were really like, I can't believe they took Matilda. What? And back then, mind you, this is a different era. There's no internet. There's no,
Right.
none of that. So everything that's happening in front of them is life changing, and the only thing they have to base it off of are the wrestling magazines.
Yep.
So yeah, absolutely, I would absolutely put them up towards the top of the list because again, at the time, they were huge, and they were completely embraced by the crowd.
Yep.
Getting into the top 3 was difficult, and trying to manipulate. I knew who my number 1 was, and I don't think there was any changing that, but it was trying to figure out who the number 2 and number 3 were. I think in general, if I were to base it off of my opinion, which I know this list is about, number 2 and number 3 would be switched around, but I don't think it's very fair for the number 2 team if I were to put them at 3, because I think they're easily the most legendary tag team of all time. But starting at number 3, personal favorite of mine, they had the mic skills. They had, again, one of those teams where separate, they're not going to do anything super memorable. Together, they had the ability to sell a perfect match, and they almost felt like they were destined to be tag team partners, and that's a Road Dogg, Jesse James, and Badass Billy Gunn. New Age Outlaws.
Oh, you didn't know?
Your ass better call somebody. And what a way to come out, too. Like, I felt like that second generation of DX really had the ability to, like, you had X-Pac, who had his own theme music, and he had his own personality, and then you had the New Age Outlaws, and then you had Triple H, and they were all blood brothers. They came together, and they created literally what Triple H said, the DX Army, that should have been right from the start. And, New Age Outlaws, they were cool even before they joined DX. They were coming out with like spray brushed South Park shirts and stuff like that. And that's when that was really big. And I always thought that was really cool. And then, of course, the infamous Kagami! when they pushed Terry Funk and Mick Foley off the stage.
Oh, and they were in a trash
garbage can.
dumpster on wheels.
Don't
yeah.
you do that! There's people in there! There's people in there!
God damn it, they're human beings!
Now, I know there's some idiot out there saying, oh, well, they just learned how to fall. Don't even get me started.
But Jim, what about all those packing peanuts that are flying out of the dumpster? Don't you worry about that. Them's human beings in there.
I just thought that was so freaking cool
Yep.
when they did that. And I was like, no way. And that's when I was like, that's when I really felt like, okay, WWF is taking this to another level now. Now they're not screwing around. And the fact that they're just celebrating on the stage after they attempted murdered these 2 old guys. I know Mick Foley wasn't old, but his body was getting there. And it was just, again, that was what sparked it. And then, they each had their own way of delivering their catch lines on the mic and everything. But I felt like, you put the tag title around those 2 guys. You see what they're all about. They're part of DX. Man, one of the coolest tag teams of all time in terms of just what they were about. I thought they were good tag team material for each other.
I'm curious about what both of you might think of this. So, when I'm getting ready in the morning or I'm just kind of dicking around the house, I'm always listening to, this is how big of a nerd I'm literally listening to like old wrestling interviews, behind the scenes stuff.
Nice,
like,
yeah.
It never ends.
No, it's cool. I get it.
Perfect. Excellent. I'm in good company here. Yeah. So I've heard several where both members of this team have said that they were getting themselves over organically, that there's a lot of focus on other big popular acts in WWE at the time.
Yeah.
But that they were making their own noise and really doing something unique. And that's when the folks from DX came knocking, saying, we want you.
Yeah.
And they argue that DX then stole their mojo and started doing more of the stuff that they were already doing, as opposed to it just being this homogenized group of outlaws.
Yeah.
They're suggesting that they started, of course, they're going to say that.
Yeah.
How does your memory treat you with that? What do you remember seeing?
With which tag team was it?
We're talking about the New Age Outlaws.
The New Age Outlaws.
Yeah.
Now, who was the team that said they're getting ripped off.
Oh no, I'm saying they said that they were creating their own buzz, doing all this kind of weird, irreverent stuff.
Oh, yeah.
DX came and said, "We like what you're doing. We want you." But then the New Age Outlaws are essentially saying that they feel that they were the spark for all the cool things DX did, and then basically what filled the Attitude Era shenanigans.
I believe I know exactly what you're talking about because I think this was a Road Dogg Jesse James interview.
Yeah, I think so.
That we were watching. And again, I think what DX was doing, it was almost like, I think that they were trying to, didn't he mention that they were trying to just do their own thing and that they didn't want, like Shawn Michaels and Triple H kind of came up to him and were like, dude, you guys are awesome. Let's do this. And they were kind of like...
Yeah, they kind of like doing their own thing out there.
Yeah, exactly. They kind of felt like, well, we don't want to be just like thrown into the mix, and they wanted to prove something about themselves, which I think ultimately worked out in the end.
Yeah.
I agree with the fact that they wanted, and I'm actually kind of glad that they held out for the way they did because it was all perfect. Because the night after WrestleMania 14, Shawn Michaels was gone. That was established. Triple H brought back X-Pac. People lost it because, here's 1, 2, 3 Kid again.
And would
but
you
he's
look
X-Pac.
at who's back?
But before he was X-Pac, he came back there and he tore into WCW right on the mic. And then
he's here to rip ass.
Yeah, and then we're here to rip
Talk
ass.
about it. Talk about a poet on the stick. We need to spend about 10 hours talking about X-Pac and how you should keep a microphone out of that man's hand at
Oh my
any
gosh.
cost.
A poet.
Holy mackerel.
That man tells the future.
We're here to rip ass.
And
End of sentence.
and then at the end of the night, that's when officially the New Age Outlaws join DX. So again, it was a groundbreaking night for not only DX, but just WWF in general. They were like, here's our faction, and we're going to do all the stuff that TNT won't let you guys do. And that's what they did. And that's, like Nash once said, he's like, we got standards and practice guy in our back room, and they got Jenna Jameson sleeping with Val Venus. It's just like,
Yeah.
they're just, again, consummate tag team champions, and one of my favorites of all time. One of the best and funniest to watch. They're entertaining, but they're also really good in the ring as well.
And let's never forget, and we owe them a debt of gratitude for birthing the Ass Man.
Good Lord.
I mean, do I need to say anything more on that
Well,
topic?
no, because I told you about my. I told you about my.
He's an ass man. Bow, bow.
I told you about my backyard wrestling federation, and he's gonna kill me for this. But my brother, his nickname, his first character was Nice Ass Allen, and he came out to Mr. Ass's entrance music, and it didn't. I don't even know why it was Nice Ass
Mr.
Allen.
Ass. That was just like...
Because he's 12 years old, and it was super awkward, but that's just who he was. Like Al didn't know exactly what he was, but Al and I grew up wrestling, so it was wrestling each other, and then carrying that over into the backyard thing. It was just super funny.
It's a solid name, Nice Ass Allen. I'm not gonna lie, that's solid.
Dude, he was.
That flows
Was there
right
a
off the
comma in there? Like, nice ass, Alan?
No.
Or it was like
just
Bad News
Nice Ass
Brown.
Alan
Nice
Frank.
Ass
Who's
Alan.
Bad News Barrett, by the way? Jumping topics for a moment.
He's the king of somewhere. Isn't he still over there being royal, doing his job? He was the king of something.
A little bit of bad news. Sorry.
No, you're good. So getting into the top two, and like I said, this was really hard because I knew.
Oh wait, I got one for you.
Oh, do you? Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Well, so mine got a little bit mixed up because we hadn't compared notes, and so we've already
Right.
hit a couple of my tops. So I'm going to save my last one of my top three. The next one I want to touch on, I actually was introduced to. I used to try to watch TNA
Yeah.
back before it became Impact. It was first coming up. There was a young tag team that showed up that reminded me a lot of the Hardys, and I don't think it was any accident the way they were being marketed.
Right.
When I saw them, they were being called Generation Me, and now we
Oh.
know them and love them as the Young Bucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Again, very similar. If you look to the way they the way they wrestle, it's no surprise who they've drawn
Yeah.
inspiration from.
Yeah. There were another group who were out doing stuff. I don't even think they were on a trampoline. I think their parents built them a ring when they were young.
Wow.
If I remember correctly, we're talking like 12 years old kind of
Right,
thing.
exactly. My parents weren't that cool.
Right. And we always hear these stories about these Mexican wrestlers and the families like the Guerreros. And
Yeah.
Pentagon is cousins with Rey Fenix, but they're brothers on TV. They have all this great chemistry because they've been in that ring, not just learning skill,
Yeah.
but doing it together for all that time. It just becomes second nature.
Yep.
So take these guys who are literal brothers, put them in a ring for all these years, set them loose. They've never looked like these guys who ought to get pushed. You know, they're fine. They're strong 7 out of 10s on a lot of scales.
Yep.
They're not the most athletic. They're not the most anything. But everywhere they've gone, I wrote down here in my notes, they were like a band. They weren't like marketed necessarily strongly. They would go to different feds and just prove themselves with their skill.
Yeah.
I remember telling you when we met last week, I played in a band that toured America a little bit, like a bunch of years ago, and we wouldn't play our hometown for a good year and a half.
Right.
We wanted to hit the road, kind of figure out how to get our legs under us without a friendly crowd, put it together. And then eventually we came home, and it was this like, what the hell just happened? Like,
Right.
we're ready to blow this place up.
No doubt.
And the Young Bucks always caught my eye because, they weren't getting that big push. They weren't the next big thing.
Yeah.
They would just show up and grind, and they were always the best. Now, I think that organic also fed into, though, and again, I pay attention to more than just what's going on in the ring. They were the guys who got their stuff when they were with Bullet Club in
Yeah.
New
Yeah.
Japan.
Yeah.
And they single-handedly started getting their merch carried in Hot Topic. WWE, as far as I know, had never even had a contract with Hot Topic. Did
Right.
they?
I don't believe so. I think that was all secondhand stuff, like and secondary merchandising
Yeah.
for them.
So
Right.
these guys had created such a buzz, and I don't know if they were just able to go in there as entrepreneurs and like talk a big game to get this to happen.
Right.
But I mean, that doesn't sound like a lot to say because we all know about Hot Topic. But for them to do that with no big WWE machine,
Right.
just show up and bam, their stuff's getting sold. That's a testament to how cool these guys are and everything they touch.
Absolutely.
They're the founding fathers of AEW, for God's sake.
Yeah, they really are. I think when you're looking at the top 2 tag teams, you're talking about, well, the inner circle. They've got their team, but between them and Lucha Bros and Young Bucks, I mean, Young Bucks are easy favorites as tag team champions. They're
Yeah.
easy.
Yep.
They make it very easy for you to go. You can put the title belts on them, and they're going to draw.
I've watched countless matches of theirs, and are they formulaic? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, not any more or any less than any other matches as far as I'm concerned. But,
Yeah.
we talked about not just creativity of maneuvers, but being in sync with your partner.
Yeah.
They were really bringing out those 4 and 5 move chains where one guy would do a snapmare, one guy would kick him in the face, the other guy would do the moonsault, the other guy would do the leg drop, they do a double drop elbow, like just stringing it together seamlessly. They got a lot of guff from people online because of the super kick parties.
Right. Right.
I
I love
mean,
those parties.
thank you.
Yeah,
Best
I'm
kind
a
of
big
party.
fan. I'm a very big fan of that, especially the Orange Cassidy double kick last week. That just blew me away. I've never seen someone perform that high level of mastery of the super kick
Yeah.
in my life as Orange Cassidy. And when
Are you talking about the lethal shin splitter?
I'm honestly surprised that the Young Bucks were still standing. Like they went to a different realm
Yeah.
after that those kicks.
I'll admit it. I've got a pretty strong stomach, but I had to look away.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
And I will also echo with what you said when it came down to the Young Bucks, is that they were a component as to my interest back when they were in New Japan Pro Wrestling as well. And seeing them and compete in a variety of different arenas, and then also, as you just said, prove themselves before they had the belts or even try and carry a belt of anybody's at that time, they just kept hitting the grindstone. And then when it came down to putting their shirts inside a Hot Topic, I love the fact that they started churning out their own shirts, in the sense in which we're setting up shop in Chicago. We're going to start printing shirts. And how we're going to start printing shirts is we're going to start building relationships with other current wrestlers or other wrestlers who have been in the game for a while, and we're going to be their main go-to. So, for example, on their website, which is the most interesting thing, they're the primary go-to for a lot of major WWE wrestlers. Like, they're the single funder or single printing shop for, I believe it's Mick Foley. as well as like 15 other people.
That's insane.
And Ric Flair's advertised on their website, I believe. Right. So.
Woo!
Yeah, I can't woo. But okay. So, but yeah, it's most interesting to me because they saw the ground game before they were already going to start building all of the other stuff. And I find, again, you know your fan base. You know what they're interested in. They know the work rate. They know that they want these grind horses that are actually able to innovate and challenge the game, but also have everything and all their ducks in a row beforehand.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was something that really kind of grabbed my attention with the Young Bucks particularly. Because man, that their pro wrestling shirt website is...
Was it ProWrestlingShirts.com?
Yeah, Pro Wrestling Tees, I believe.
Tees, there you go.
And and I've been to the shop a couple times. Great place. Cool veneer on the outside. And again, if you're the official merchandiser of WWE folks, that's got to be a craw.
Right.
That's got to bother Vince a great deal.
I said it last week that a majority of what we're seeing from the Orange Cassidys to the Joey Janela's to the Luchasaurus to the Bucks, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla has been a huge thing in California for a bunch of years now. I don't want to say huge because their shows usually have 300 or 400 people. But if you wanted to check the pulse of the most popular, cool stuff going on in independent wrestling for the last 5 years, easy.
Yeah.
Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. You need to check it out. That's where the Bucks came from.
Super Dragon.
You know?
God.
You ever need a curb stomp, you know who to call.
Exactly.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Oh, good Lord.
Yep.
Well,
Was it 13 that... Sorry. 13 curb stomps didn't kill the Fiend.
Well, that's because
that's a far cry from the 3 tombstones
I don't
it
know what
took
to
The
tell you.
Undertaker to beat Kane at WrestleMania 13
I got
or 14.
I got nothing.
Yeah. So the
I just got nothing on that.
moving along with the Crucial Squared Circle,
Yeah.
we're going to dabble in the top 2. And like I said, the only reason, I would have put New Age Outlaws at number 2 because I like them in the grand scheme a little bit better than these guys, just, because it's very hard to deal with what New Age Outlaws had going on as a tag team. But if you're going to talk about the greatest tag team of all time, the majority of people will put the Legion of Doom at number 1. And
Not the Bushwhackers?
yeah.
They're matching
Not the
outfits.
Heavenly Bodies? What?
They both ate sardines.
Not the Killer Bees?
The Ding Dongs.
The Ding Dongs. For me,
Thank
Wow.
you. Ding Dong shout out.
what the hell? What the hell's this
I'm
Ding
not making
Dong?
anything up. You think I'm making that up? You look it up. Look up the Ding Dongs.
I think it's about to show you, JR. Yeah, a lot of people would put Legion of Doom as number 1, and it's I would not even argue with that. They're my number 2 though.
Mine as well.
On my personal list.
Yep, number 2.
And I mean, what can you say? What can't you say about the Legion of Doom? They inspired what it is to be an intimidating tag team.
They were the prototype for that.
They absolutely were. And with even when they had their manager, and even after they parted ways with the manager, and they had him when they came initially to the WWF. But
Shout out Paul Ellering.
yeah, Paul Ellery just that was his job, is to bring them in. But man, when you talk about devastating tag teams and intimidating, they didn't need a manager because they had the enthusiasm, they had, again, the anger, and they had the mic skills. They each had particular ways that they spoke on the mic. Mm-hmm. And it really intimidated you as a fan of professional wrestling when you saw these guys on the mic, because they would get in there and they would basically spit about how they're going to tear you apart. And it wasn't like they would go into the ring and just start going crazy, but as they progressed in the match, they would get better and stronger. And they had that unique chemistry that it was either one guy or the other normally, but they were both able to sell it very well, where this was at a time where tag team matches, there would be one guy left in for like a good 6-7 minutes, which feels like 15 to 20. Mm-hmm. And where you just get beaten down, but they always seem to have really good flow in their matches where they would both be taking a beating, but one guy in particular would be waiting for the hot tag. Mm-hmm. And whoever it would be, regardless, had their own wrestling style where they would be able to come back, start whooping ass. It would then go back and forth and then ultimately lead to the wrap up of the match. And, the Doomsday Device was the classic tag team finisher that was just, it was devastating, because sometimes you would clothesline dude and he would land on his friggin' head.
Well, I was just thinking of that visual. So I brought that up earlier because of the Steiner's top rope bulldog.
Yeah.
So try to visualize this. You got a person standing up. You walk up behind them. You crouch down and stick your head between their legs. You stand up. So now they're sitting on your shoulders. The Legion of Doom, or the Road Warriors, whichever you want to call them. Animal would hoist this person up on the shoulders. Hawk would get on the top rope, dive off with a clothesline. Now, in modern day wrestling, if somebody's going to do that kind of maneuver, the person standing with the person on their shoulders is going to put their hands like under the knees of this person. Yeah. So when they get hit, they're going to push up. Right. And the person's going to do a backflip. I don't think the Road Warriors did that.
No, Animal would actually hook his arms around their legs. He would hook his arms around the outside of their legs and almost hold them in place and then just release his arms. He wouldn't give any kind of lift or push.
No, that was people just getting dropped on their heads.
That was all Hawk's clothesline delivery.
Yeah.
He would have to deliver a strong enough clothesline to that the person getting hit would naturally flip over, and it would be that person's responsibility to protect themselves after just getting clotheslined by some huge dude, which isn't going to happen too often.
I'm sure you both know the story about Mick Foley's very first appearance on WWF programming at the time. He was a jobber.
Yeah.
And he wrestled against the British Bulldogs. And he got a broken jaw in his very first match because the Dynamite Kid clotheslined him so hard.
Yep.
Now, he said that at the time, Dynamite was notorious for that, and people did not want to be in the ring with him, especially jobbers. Just going to take it out on him, right?
Right.
I think the Steiners had a very similar reputation.
Nasty Boys, too. Nasty Boys
they saw
were
jobbers
really
as
tough.
just human fodder. We're going to grind them up and spit them out because they're just here to make us look good anyway. The top of that list, I think, was the Road Warriors. I don't think they gave a damn about the safety of these people there in the ring with half the time.
Yeah, that's a scary finisher, no doubt. You don't want to be on the bad end of that move because you're talking about landing on your freaking head on some wood.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you remember a team from back in that time, too, called the Powers of Pain?
Yeah, actually, that was, at the time, it was Barbarian and who was the other guy?
The Warlord.
The Warlord, that's right. And they were kind of brought in, too, as... That was actually initially how they came in, wasn't it?
They came in specifically to take on the Legion of Doom.
Because they gave him the eye makeup, they gave him the face paint, the partial face paint.
Two huge steroid swollen dudes, absolutely same body styles, yeah. I remember as a kid watching again, this must have been early 80s, and I think it was before WCW, so it would have still been NWA. And there was that feud that was just starting up between the Road Warriors and the Powers of Pain.
Yeah.
And I remember that they were, this has never left my mind, they had a weightlifting competition. So they brought out the bench press, and they brought out the big Olympic bar with all the plates.
Yeah.
And they had him at ringside just going for it. And if I remember correctly, it was Animal, who was the bigger of the two from the Legion of Doom.
Absolutely.
And the Warlord, who was bigger than the Barbarian.
Yeah.
They both were massive.
Yeah.
And it just like if they have an arm wrestling match or they have any of that crap on TV, you can kind of tell the good guys are about to win, and then something dirty's got to go on.
Yeah.
In this particular case, it's always stuck in my mind. Animal, I think, had just gotten up maybe from his last lift. They were about to win. And then I think the Barbarian grabbed him and he smashed him face first into the plates of the weight that were on the bar already. So not on the ground, but on the suspended bar. And this is what gets me, because I've been in gyms and I've lifted weights.
Yeah.
if I remember correctly, this was way up over about 500 pounds. He runs him headfirst into it, and the whole bench flips upside down with all of that weight rolling. Like, he hit that thing hard.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it was his hands or his face, I don't know. But here's the other thing that gets me, and you don't see this anymore. They talked about Animal having a crushed eye socket as a result of this attack.
Yeah.
And for at least a month after the fact, when he came out, there was no wrestling for him, but he had half of his face taped up, gauze hanging out from his eye. Talked about, I haven't been able to leave my house. I've been at doctor's appointments, et cetera, et cetera. It's not like we don't hear about that kind of stuff, but maybe it was because of the violence of how it happened. Maybe it's because I understood that 500 pounds shouldn't move that easily.
Yeah, exactly.
But I bought every second of it. Like, they broke that guy's face.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And he is going to kill them. Like, and here I am, 30-some years later, and I still remember that happening.
And it's similar to a storyline with Sandman, too, in ECW.
Oh, God, right, I remember that.
They'd had a storyline with him, and he legitimately didn't leave his house. And his wife was like, dude, whatever. And he's like, no. This is what's happening in ECW right now. This is who I am. This is my livelihood. He sold it all the way through. He did not leave his house.
Right.
And
she's like, honey, our lights got turned off. Are you sure you need to do that?
And it was part of the storyline too, and it was part of the angle, and he made sure as a professional, even at that level, that he was like, no, this is, we're not breaking kayfabe.
I want to see Daniel Day-Lewis as a wrestler. I'm just thinking about the level of kayfabe that he would commit to.
Right.
I mean, he's not going to be any better than Mickey Rourke was in The Wrestler, right?
Oh my God.
Can I tell you I haven't seen that yet? I'm sorry, but I've been told that I need to.
I mean,
I saw the last 30 minutes, and when he jams his finger into the meat slicer, it gave me PTSD because I cut part of my finger off on a meat slicer. So
I'd say see it. It's not going to blow your mind, but he really is pretty authentic. I'd say it's pretty true to what okay, I'm not going to spoil anything, but he in the movie is about 20 years past his prime. And he was never like on Hulk Hogan's level. But the movie actually opens with a montage. It's really cool. It's showing all these old posters from the early 80s of him wrestling certain guys.
Yeah.
There's cool like voiceover playing that sounds like old radio, wrestling broadcast. And as it's wrapping up, showing kind of what his career was like, the music abruptly stops, and then you see this broken down, like 55-year-old wrestler who's in the locker room with all these 20-somethings who are talking about their spots with the tables and the tacks and the this and the that.
Yeah.
And he still looks like it's 1987, and that's not far off from how it was.
Right, exactly.
Right, yeah, it's been on my list. I do need to watch it.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's cool.
So you listed your top tag team of all time. You already announced.
I had the Dudleys as my hard number one. Yeah.
It's really not a surprise because they were at the time when they especially when they came to WWF. I was so excited because I was just to see what they would do with them, and they were my favorite tag team of that era. Do you have any other tag teams that you haven't spoken about yet?
I mean, I was just going to do an honorable mention, and it's not that they're necessarily a favorite yet. And I mentioned their names earlier. I'm a huge mark right now for the Private Party.
Yeah,
partially because they're so young, and I like that underdog story. But I said one of my sweet spots is for chain tag team wrestling.
Right.
And their ability to just hit breathtaking maneuver after maneuver after maneuver in one quick sequence. Their finishing move, it's not rocket science, but it can hit out of nowhere, very much like the Dudley Death Drop, the 3D. It's where you'll have a person typically sitting in the corner, like up on the top rope. There's been some kind of fight in the corner. And I wish I knew. I don't remember the wrestlers' names yet in that tag team. I'll have to look into that. One of them will jump up and do a quick Hurricane Rana, which sends the person from the corner diving towards the middle of the ring. And then from out of nowhere, here comes the partner to hit him with a quick cutter. Catches him in the cutter. Yeah. And, I mean, it's to call it poetry in motion. That's the cliche.
That's real freaking
beautiful.
Yeah,
right,
it's well
exactly.
Executed every
Timing's
time
perfect.
I've seen it.
Yeah. No, it's great.
And you got to give it up for some classics. Rock and Roll Express. One of the greatest tag teams of all time. And again, this list is very very partial because it's about who you grew up watching, what kind of impact they made on you. You look at
Heat.
Yeah. Just look at like teams like, and again, the '80s were huge for these like cliche tag teams, like the Genius with the Heavenly Bodies. You had the Bushwhackers, the Killer Bees, the Rougeau brothers. You even had Strike Force with Rick Martel and Tito Santana, who were former tag team champions.
Had the Can-Am Connection.
The Can-Am Connection.
Yep.
I can't remember the other guy's name in that. It was Rick Martel and
Tom Zink.
Tom Zink. Thank you. Oh my God, way to pull one out. That's huge.
I told you.
And they actually beat. Who did they beat at WrestleMania 3? They beat The Rock, Don Morocco, and
Dino Bravo.
Dino Bravo, indeed. And they had Cowboy Bob Orton in the corner for that one. And
now, was Cowboy's arm healed at that point, or was
no,
he still
had
having problems?
I think he still had I think he had the wrist.
Yeah. They need to send him to that
wrist
doctor
cast.
who worked on Mike Sharp. He finally got his situation all straightened out.
Gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
But that was the time of cliche tag teams, and there was always one tag team that stood out to me, and it was a tag team that not only made history, which was tarnished by Vince, and I'll say this: New Day are a really good tag team that sells merch. New Day is incredibly talented in the ways of selling merchandise.
Be careful. I don't know if I like the direction this is going. I like the New Day.
I like what they were all about. At first, I wasn't a huge fan of what they were doing.
You don't have the Power of Positivity franchise.
But the problem is I think Kofi Kingston is a standout amongst that entire group. I think and it really shows the power of the fans. I'm not a huge fan of the fact that they held on for the tag titles as long as they did. I think if they weren't as good as selling merch as they were and winning fans over, I don't think they would have held the tag titles on.
I mean, is that not the Hulk Hogan method?
I mean, it basically is. And when you're talking about professional wrestling, you know, that goes into it. That is very influential. Again, if you've won the fans over, you should probably give them what they want. A lot of times that's not happening.
Give me what I want.
Exactly. And I think with New Day, they had the crowd in the palm of their hands.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very easy for you to say that you guys are going to be our dudes. And for that, I don't hold any kind of aggression for them. The aggression falls on Vince McMahon because I think making them the longest running tag team champions in WWF history was less about New Day and more about Vince's gripe with one of the members of the previous longest running tag team champions in WWF history, because one of those guys made a case that, well, he was one of the leading guys when it came to mental health, and saying that WWF doesn't care about their old talent and that they accept no responsibility for some of the after effects of what happens to these wrestlers when they get older. And one of the guys on my number one tag team is he's been one of the most vocal about that. And I feel that's one of the reasons Vince made the decision to destroy that legacy and to bury the fact that he was ever a part of anything going down in WWF history. I think he wanted New Day to destroy that, and New Day also helped themselves out by being who they were and being what they were all about, is having fun and basically winning the entire crowd. There was not anybody in their crowd who hates New Day.
This is hilarious because I remember Tom Zink and Dino Bravo off the top of my head, and my anticipation, I have no idea who you're going to say. I really don't.
Like I said, a lot of people will say Legion of Doom is the number one tag team, but WWF's answer to Legion of Doom will always be...
You are not going to say what I think you're about to say.
Bill
Here comes
Reed,
the axe.
Bill Reed and Barry Darso.
Oh, wow.
Demolition. I thought Demolition was when I first saw Demolition and they used to come out with the black hockey masks with the hood in the back.
That was
and
cool.
they were covered in studs. I mean, First, let's just put it out there. One of my favorite singers of all time is Rob Halford from Judas Priest, and
yep.
I loved his style. The studs, the leather. Yeah, I'm just a sucker for that kind of thing.
Were you disappointed when you found out that he was a gay man who had just ripped off leather boy culture?
Not at all.
Okay, right on.
Actually, in fact, I always knew. That was just kind of an assumption from seeing him and watching him perform.
Yeah.
It was never a shock to me when he came out because I was like, well, hell bent for leather.
Yeah.
He used to whip people. Listen to how he can sing.
It was just hilarious how many metalheads were totally oblivious to that.
I relish that thought. I wish I could taste the saltiness of their tears because, and I've said it before. I wouldn't have the guy any other way. He's perfect the way he is, and I kind of felt that way with Demolition. I felt like the fact that they were given that title of the longest running WWF tag team champions in all history meant a lot because they worked with everybody.
That's shocking. I did not know that.
They dropped the titles. When they dropped the titles originally, they dropped them to it was the Colossal Connection, which was Haku and Andre the Giant.
Oh, right.
And they had lost the titles and you got to remember too, Mr. Fuji was also their manager. So not only do you have these dudes who are painted up crazy, this was also before the Ultimate Warrior too. They were painted up all crazy. They were wearing leather and studs, and they were big dudes. And I really liked their finisher too, which their finisher was similar to a backbreaker. Yep. What it was is they would set up for a backbreaker. Usually it was Axe who would balance the guy on his back, on Axe's knee, and then Smash would jump off the top rope with an elbow drop.
Yep.
To the dude's face.
Yep.
And I thought it was a cool finisher. It wasn't. It's obviously Dudley Death Drop is my favorite of all time, but again, kind of an innovative finisher for the two. It was almost like similar to a guillotine type thing, and I always dug Demolition and how they wrestled, and also their natural on mic abilities. Mr. Fuji did very little talking for them. And again, once Mr. Fuji left and they became face, you had Axe, who's he sounds like he had just chain smoked 2 packs of cigarettes, and he sounded grungy. Like he really just sounded grungy, and he was straight to the point. And Smash, who brought that energy, he brought that energy and he brought the ferocity. It is similar to how the Hart Foundation operated, where Bret Hart was kind of the cool, calm, and collected, and Jim the Anvil Neidhart was the spaz. Well, Smash was the spaz, but Axe made you believe that you were going to get hurt.
I didn't know it at the time. When I was young, this was, they were popular mid-'80s, right? Mid to late 80s. The guy who played Axe actually had a really long career before that.
He did, actually, Barry Darso. And
No, the other guy.
Bill Reed.
Yeah. Didn't he play like Mr. Wrestling or one of those characters, like a masked character for a very long time?
Well, and Bill Reed was actually the original Demolition member. I believe his partner, who, I can't remember what his name was originally, but I think he was in a tag team called the Mad Dogs.
Okay.
And people actually chanted it because they recognized him through the face paint. So they broke that up because they liked the Demolition idea, but they didn't like the fact that fans could tell that this was a guy from another team. They wanted a fresh face.
Okay.
And that's when Dorso came in and completed the team as Smash.
Okay.
But you're right. Bill Reed was he had been around for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
As Axe, and it was something that I wanted to bring up too. I will always give Demolition credit because Demolition had one of my top 3 pops that I've ever seen. And if you go back and watch WrestleMania 6, and it's the one at the Sky Dome. Unfortunately, Andre the Giant, his health had deteriorated so much that he played corner man, basically. And they would shove Axe or Smash into the corner. He would hold on to him, and Haku basically had to defend the tag titles on his own.
To be fair, Haku has been known to maim entire bars full of people. So,
yeah, and you know what?
It was a scary individual.
And the intimidation of having Andre the Giant, even just in the corner.
Yeah.
And they did an excellent job painting that picture. It could have been bad. It could have looked really dumb. But in the end, when Demolition hit their finisher on Haku, and when they win the titles, you look at that crowd, and that is another one of those big pops that still gives me chills because the whole place is behind them. And to have a Sky Dome full of people behind you says a lot about how over your tag team is.
Yeah.
Granted, Andre the Giant was a long time running heel since WrestleMania, so 3 years going on being a heel with Bobby Heenan, and then for him to turn around and go face like that after the match and beat up Haku and beat up, that was when Heenan starts slapping Andre around, and then he's like, what? And grabs his ass. But it's just the fact that Demolition was completely over at that time, and I didn't love any other wrestling entity at the time more than Demolition except for the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah. I was, when I was young, I used to read Pro Wrestling Illustrated quite a little bit.
Okay.
And I don't know if this thing ever stopped. I'm sure at some point it did, but there would be this little like fictional story in the magazine where they talked about dream matchups that are probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
And I have this memory. I don't know if I was on my way to vacation, but I have a visual of being in a car and I'm reading Pro Wrestling Illustrated and I'm reading a story about the members of Demolition encountering the members of the Legion of Doom.
Oh, yeah.
In a mall somewhere and just beating the living hell out of one another. And my young brain going, did they make this up? Did this really happen?
Yeah.
I didn't know, but it was so cool to think about because clearly they were created in the image of.
Very much.
And then eventually I think they did cross paths, but at the time that was a mind blower, the notion of these two crossing paths.
They were definitely the WWF's answer to the Road Warriors. Yeah. There's no doubt that they were created in their image. I just liked how it was presented. I thought WWF's I'd seen the Road Warriors. I liked their wrestling, but I was just all about Demolition. I was all about the fact that Fuji was behind them. And even once they moved on from Fuji, I just liked who they were as individuals. And when Bill Reed had contracted that shellfish virus, I believe he had come down with an allergic reaction, which really messed up his health, which is why they brought Crush into the mix. If you remember, Crush became the third, and that was very similar to when Puke became the third member of Legion of Doom. It had a
He's gotta puke.
It just both felt the same, and that's when it kind of became gimmicky.
Yeah.
But that's when also he, out of fear, and there was a rumor that actually Axe was going to take a backstage position within the WWF.
He was definitely not young at the time.
No, he was definitely in his 40s by the time that they were, or upper 30s, early 40s when they were making their stamp on the world.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons, him getting sick, him taking a backstage role, which is why they brought Crush into the mix. And they both said that it just never really felt right. The chemistry was never there. It was a cool package. It was a cool action figure. There's 3 of them now. But again, once you get kind of gimmicky with something that came over naturally, that's when it went downhill. And then naturally, once the Legion of Doom came in, they broke Demolition up, and then they brought Barry Dorso back, and they're like, well, we have this idea, which he wasn't sold on at first, but he ended up coming back and becoming the Repo Man.
I was just about to ask you.
Yeah, which was really short-lived. And
so tell me how that impacts, if at all, your memory of Demolition as the standout monster crew, and then later one of them is the Repo Man.
I never knew early on that he was Repo Man, to be honest with you. I was never able to link those together.
Yeah.
But looking back on it, I got to give him some props because, going from literally one character to a completely different character, I got to give it up to him. He sold that interview at Royal Rumble 1992. He was a part of the Royal Rumble, and this is when pre-Rumble vignettes were huge, where each wrestler kind of had their say in what they were going to do.
Those little 10 seconds of...
Yeah, it was like a 20 to 30 second shoot interview where I'm going to win. And,
I may have drawn the number 3, but I'm going to fight hard for my parents tonight.
Yeah.
I won't get eliminated in 60 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah, good luck with that, Barry Horowitz. But as the Repo Man, he gave a really good, quick interview. And again, until I found out that he was the Repo Man, I was like, wow, I didn't even, You wouldn't even recognize it. But I think that's a testament to the kind of work he put in, and was like, okay, I'm gonna really try to put this character across, even though I'm a fucking Rebo man. It's like,
Careful,
again,
I'm gonna steal your bike. Careful.
He just did such a
I'm gonna repossess your car. Look
and that
out.
was his angle to. Well, that particular Royal Rumble was the best Royal Rumble that's ever taken place, in my opinion, where Ric Flair wins on entry number 3, where nobody had ever come in before number 5 and won, where Bobby the Brain Heenan had an investment on Ric Flair winning, and Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby the Brain Heenan put on a award-winning performance. If you've never seen Royal Rumble 92 or aren't privy to what was kind of happening around that time, Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby the Brain Heenan put on, even though my personal favorite is Heenan and Jesse Ventura, those two put on an award-winning performance on selling a storyline. And it's, it is what their performance is what it means to be an entertainer.
Is that where Gorilla was real bent out of shape about the fact that Heenan was like he's supposed to be a broadcaster? Why are you so in favor of this guy? Am I remembering that wrong?
He was very much aware that because that was kind of like one of their main angles. But this particular match, he made the story goes as Heenan made a massive, massive investment in Ric Flair becoming the world champion. And this was going to take Heenan to new heights. And Gorilla Monsoon's angle was, as soon as Ric Flair hits, the first entry is British Bulldog. The second entry is $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase. And the winner of the Royal Rumble wins the WWF Heavyweight title.
Yep.
As soon as DiBiase is out, Ric Flair comes in at number 3. And that's when the performance begins. You've got the performance inside the ring. You're about to have a guy who's going to go over an hour and 10 minutes in the ring to win the world title. But you've got the on-air performance of Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby the Brain Heenan, who is having a mental breakdown because he knows he's screwed. He believes in Ric Flair. He truly believes he's going to win, but he knows he's totally screwed. And Gorilla's right there like, you can kiss it goodbye. It's over. Nobody has ever come in before number 5. They paint an absolute amazing picture. And it's still my all-time favorite. It's my all-time favorite match to watch because of the way Ric Flair tells the story with his body and the way Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby the Brain Heenan narrate this incredible event. And it's just, I don't think there's ever been a more believable conversation between two people. And the whole time Gorilla's like, he's laughing at him. He's like, I told you, it's over. It's not going to happen. And the whole time Gorilla's like, would you shut up? He's yelling at Gorilla Monsoon, and they're going back and forth. And the beauty of it is the change in attitude with Bobby the Brain Heenan during that match. I know we're getting a little off topic, but it's such a phenomenal job because you see Heenan changing where you get in there and Ric Flair is getting pounded and almost eliminated, and you've got Bobby the Brain Heenan who's crying on air, and then Roddy Piper goes up and breaks it up and kind of saves Ric Flair temporarily. And he's like, thank you. He's like, thank you, Roddy. It's not a skirt. It's a kilt. And then a couple seconds later, Roddy Piper starts beating up on Flair. And he's like, you freak, you skirt wearing freak. It's not a kilt. It's a skirt. And it shifts right back to, but the main thing is it's believable. The whole thing is passionate and believable. And
it was an interesting angle anyway, because that was when Flair made his debut. I mean,
right.
Now we're kind of used to people crossing paths and showing up in other companies, but at the time, again, if people were just WWF fans, they were used to Hogan being the center of the universe.
Exactly.
But Flair had been doing it all over the planet for, decades already. Yeah. He was the NWA.
Exactly.
So for him to come in under Heenan was just the most perfect marriage anyway to make that make sense. I remember Mr.
Yeah.
Perfect was in on that mix.
Yeah, Perfect was he was the backup man. He had Flair's back. Honestly, you watch that event and like I said, it's just for me it's just chills. They perfected the art of calling a match and making you understand that you're now a part of the storyline by experiencing and watching this. You are now in it. You're now a part of the story. And that's something that I feel is incredibly lacking with the WWE today. It's a joke when you go back and watch a call like that between two people who just, like I said, when you can be a part of it, when you feel like you're a part of that, you know that you're experiencing something special. It's like I said, I think ultimately going back to what you said, I don't think when I found out that Barry Darso was the Repo Man, I was actually shocked because I was like, wow, I had no idea. You wouldn't even be able to tell because he like flicked a switch and he was a totally different guy.
Yep.
And I think that's a credit to who he is and completely underestimated tag team. But I think just for the simple fact that they were given the WWF tag team titles for nearly 400 days, I think says a lot to the company's belief in who they were at the time. And I don't think it had anything to do with the Road Warriors. I think it just had to do with they were the best workers. They had earned their titles. And then when they had their titles, people got behind them. They started enjoying them. Fuji, all it took was Fuji hooking them with the cane and screwing them over with the powers of pain to get them over with the crowd. And once that happened,
Little dash of salt here and there.
once that happened, that's all it took, and boom, the crowd loved them, and I was just a major fan. So yeah, I mean, I loved both lists. I thought they were, I thought like I said, all that stuff's.
Yeah. I figured we'd have a lot of crossover, but it's definitely interesting to hear how you're affected by different things at different times. Very cool.
Absolutely. Well, we'll get into a lot more going forward. We're gonna take a week off. Davison's got a show coming up. What's the show actually? Plug it.
Yeah, so next Friday, it's going to be the day after Halloween. It's actually November 1st. The first annual show was last year. It's at Bell's Brewery, downtown Kalamazoo. This year, there are going to be 4 bands playing. Obviously, it's the Halloween show, so it's going to be a costume party.
Right.
But there are 4 different bands doing cover sets. So I'm in a band called Hard Candy, and we're doing an all No Doubt cover set.
Cool.
There's another band doing Led Zeppelin. There's another band doing Frank Turner. That's members of the local Mushmen.
Yeah,
so,
Mushmen.
So they're actually calling it Skank Turner, which is kind of fun. And then you have members of, and I wish I had known this coming in, but there's people doing They Might Be Giants as the 4th band. There's a costume contest, and in fact, I'm the MC of the costume contest as well. So, it did not sell out last year, but the building was full past capacity. We are expecting a sellout this year. There are tickets on sale on the website for Bell's. You can buy the day of. If you want to go, I would highly recommend you get a ticket ahead of time. It's going to be a big party.
Awesome. And you didn't book it on October 26th. Thank you.
No, we actually wanted people to show up.
Right,
I
exactly.
hear things are happening on the 26th. I don't know.
Right. Just a few.
Something.
Just a few hundred events.
Maybe.
So there'll be like 4 at each.
Yeah, we had talked about the possibility of some upcoming shows too. I had said I would love to spend some time talking about some of the scariest wrestlers in history, and I don't even mean in the ring necessarily, but like New Jack, who I brought up earlier.
Let's get into that on the next
stuff.
event. I think scariest is a good angle to take because there's a lot of people out there who are, there's a lot of wrestlers people probably haven't even heard of that they should really check out.
Yeah.
Or mess with. They should not mess with. Like if you see this person, they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm a wrestler by the name of so and so, New Jack." Like, okay, that's funny. Yeah, what do you like, cheese? No, no, he'll kill you.
If you ever see a giant Tongan in a bar and he tells you his name is Haku, he may or may not be wearing a purple velvet robe. Don't talk to him. He may bite your nose off and throw it at your friend.
Yeah.
We'll get into it in a couple of weeks. The Crucial Squared Circle going to talk about some of the scariest professional wrestlers of all time. Enjoy your Halloween. Enjoy this podcast, and we appreciate you guys hanging out. We'll talk to you again soon.